Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We have now all 7 board members in attendance. We'll return back to the agenda item, amending or agenda review to update those who were not coming, who had not made it in. We agreed to add an item for information to allow Judy to share a little bit about legislative updates. Are there any other items to be added, moved, or changed? Gordon?
Thank you. I'd like to add an item for action to address the complaint that was heard in executive session earlier tonight.
Do we have agreement to add an item for action to address the complaint we heard in executive session tonight? I just need head nods from everyone. Can't see everyone. I see head nods. Well, just want to say that we will be adding that item. Judy, you have another one?
I just wanted to move one earlier. We have 2 guests that move it up on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do that. Yeah,
Great,
sure.
all right. It's the item from the Lane ESD report about the, they need to leave and they're very late on the agenda. So I'm open to suggestions. I'd like to move it up, maybe right after comments.
Yes. So if we have agreement, we will be moving the item for future action, the Lane ESD service contract presented by Superintendent Skirto and Chair Hamilton to just before our consent agenda. Do we have agreement? Yes. Okay, well, we will move that item up to before the consent agenda. Laurel, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I would like to add a few things to the agenda. I would like to, first is, since we have no goals at this point, I'd like to propose some goals for the board, and I would like to add that to the agenda.
Where would you like to add that to the agenda?
I'm not particular about where it goes. I just like it would be, I would like it to be in the agenda. The budget committee needs goals and we need goals and we do not have any. So I would like to propose some, and if people agree, great. If not, we go and try again.
So item for information. Laurel?
Yeah, because we could always vote if we decide to change it to an item for action. That's fine.
Okay, do we have agreement to add as an item for information, board goals? You get head nods? Okay, we will add as an item for information, board goals. Laurel, you mentioned another thing?
Yes, the other thing I would like to add to an item for information or is how board members communicate and having a policy around our communication and what we use. We know that board members use Signal, which I believe is against public meetings law because all the messages disappear immediately almost, depending on what times you pick. And so I think as a board, we should decide an ethical way we would like to have our communication.
So is that also an item for information? Is that what you're asking?
I think we'll have to have a discussion and then maybe get more information. So I guess that is an item for information.
So do we have agreement to add as an item for information, board communication? You can see Judy. Do we have head nods from everyone? So Judy and Alicia? Okay. We can add that as an item for information. And Superintendent Dye?
In the opposite direction, we had hoped to have on the consent agenda approved memorandum of agreement with OSEA concerning landscape support from community vendors. We have a tentative agreement, but that's not yet been ratified, and it won't be until the 6th of February, so we'd like to remove that from this consent agenda and bring it to the next meeting.
Do we have an agreement to remove from the consent agenda the OSEA memorandum?
I couldn't hear all of that.
Go say it again, Andy.
Removing from the consent agenda approval of the memorandum of agreement with OSEA concerning landscaping support from community vendors. The ratification vote is not concluded and will not be until the 6th of February, so it will be placed on the February 15th agenda as a consent item.
Okay, it will be removed from this agenda. Are there any other changes, movement in the agenda, removal? Gordon?
Thanks. I just want to go back to the issue about communication. As far as my understanding is, to change the agenda takes either unanimous consent or a majority vote. And we didn't have either of those for that item. And to me, it seems like something that would be better to either have questions in and get legal advice from in a memo before we put time on the meeting. So I myself would not support spending time on tonight's meeting doing that, but if we're going to vote, we should have a vote and see if there's a majority to do it or not.
If that happens, we need to vote for everything that has been added because we didn't vote on everything appropriately.
We either need unanimous consent or a vote.
No, I didn't see any head nods.
The other items have unanimous consent. This item does not, so Laurel, if you want to make a motion, we can have it seconded and then vote.
I didn't give a head nod for any of the other things because I couldn't see any head nods. And also we're not allowed straw polls based on Robert's rules. So we need to vote on everything that has been added to the agenda then. If we're going to follow, all of a sudden, after I place something, the Black board member asks for something to be placed on the agenda, all of a sudden, now Gordon is asking for a certain kind of vote, when before that wasn't an issue.
So Laurel, nobody.
That's his bias.
Nobody indicated opposition to any of the other requests for changes in the agenda. So
That wasn't the question asked.
the question was asked.
The question needs to ask is there anybody opposed? That wasn't the question that was ever asked.
Laurel, do you have opposition to any of the agenda items that we have changed on the agenda?
You're singling me out now, and that is unprofessional and not okay. What I'm saying is this should be added. Gordon is singling me out after all the other ones. I did not see the head nods of everybody. So I would like an actual vote for all of the items so we can be fair and not just single out the Black board member as you and Gordon seem to do every meeting.
Okay, I will ask all the board members for any of the agenda items. Is there anyone who objects to any of the agenda items? We've already heard Gordon ask for us to bring the last one to a vote. I'll go through all of them.
I don't remember them all.
I will go through all of them. Does anybody object to adding
Thank you.
Judy's request for an item for information to update us on legislative action? Please speak up because I cannot see everybody on the screen.
So, Maya, sorry, are you saying without objection? So if I have an objection, now is my turn to speak, right?
Turn to
So-
speak.
So the
Is there-
question is, without objection, should we put this on the agenda under items for, in this case, it was items for action, correct?
It was an item for information. So
Items
we're
for
going back to
information.
one.
All right, thank you.
Speak up if you object to adding Judy's item for information to the agenda regarding a legislative update. then that remains added to the agenda. The next one was moving the Lane ESD service contract item for future action further up in the agenda to just before the consent agenda. Are there any objections to making that movement in the agenda? Please speak up. Okay, that shift in the agenda stands. The next agenda item was the addition of an item for action to take action on the complaint we just heard in executive session. Is there any objection?
I have an objection to that.
Okay, Gordon, would you please make a motion?
Yes,
Add this or not?
I move that we add to the agenda an item for action on taking action on the complaint we heard in executive session.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, Gordon moves to add to the agenda action on the item, the complaint we just heard in executive session, and Michelle Shu seconds. Is there discussion? Laura?
I think we need more time to discuss this. And I think we are rushing something that, and I believe that is unethical, since it is us deciding about us in a complaint.
Are there any other comments? Michelle?
In discussion with our attorney, the legal advice was that we still have to make a decision on it because there's no other body that can make a decision. So the decision still rests with our board.
Is there any other discussion? I'll raise my hand. I just want to mention that we ended our executive session 20 minutes early, and nobody indicated any desire to continue discussing or asking questions. So I think that's worth noting. Laura?
Yes, so in executive session, we can only talk about what actions we can do. We can't really dissect what is happening. And I am saying that, yes, obviously we have to make a decision because that is how our policy stands right now. Though our policy in and of itself seems to be very unethical, that we get to just be the judge and jury for ourselves. I do believe that it would behoove us and be a careful behavior for a board to say, we would like someone else to look at this and to make sure we have acted above and beyond reproach. This shows we care about that. To rush this through shows we do not care about ethics.
Laurel, the motion on the table is whether to add it to the agenda or not, so we need to limit our discussion as to whether to add it or not and not discuss the actual decision for action. Judy?
Well, that's interesting because Michelle just said something else and you did not correct her, but you are correcting me, Maya, and that is inappropriate. If you're going to correct people, which you should not, your only job is to guide the meeting, you need to be fair and unbiased in your behavior.
Judy?
I just want to say that to Laurel's point, I think what I'd like to do, given the policy we have, I just going to say that I think you bring up some good points. I'm going to recommend at the end of the meeting that we put on looking at our policy for complaint review for a future meeting. To amend it to see what we can do when someone's involved.
I want to I want to point out that we just cleared the room of a handful of students who were here to be honored because we are at 7:45 in our meeting. This is not how we need to be conducting ourselves when we have students here to honor. I'm going to call the question on this vote. All those in favor of adding to the agenda?
Calling the question means asking for a vote to call the question. We are conducting ourselves as a board and responsibly.
No, we're not behaving responsibly when a room of students just left the meeting. Does anybody object?
I am not there because I cannot be there because you refuse to bring security back to the meeting.
No.
Maya,
Alicia?
is there a way to pause this? Because we need to finish this discussion. Will we be able to get the students back in to pause this and honor them?
Andy is working on it. I'm going to call a recess. We'll be back momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
I am not there. I cannot see anything that's happening. I do know everything else was rushed through, then I was being picked.
The students walked out the room, we're just trying to bring them back so we can honor and then pick up this conversation. That's what happened. There was about 10?
No, there was more.
More, maybe 15 students anyhow that walked out, so. I think Andy and Maya are trying to ask him to come back.
The girl here is to recess.
If we're recessed, what is going on then?
Thanks for coming back.
Would you guys want us to stand? Well, I think if you kind of turn around right there, I think that's good, so you're facing.
So I have a speech. I'm able to still do it.
So bring it back.
Before we take a picture, I'd just like to acknowledge this is the first state championship team, volleyball team in the school's history. You are an inspiration to absolutely every student athlete in this district, in particular, current and aspiring female student athletes. It takes a whole lot to do what you did. I'm really, really proud of you. Nothing can ever take this away. Very, very proud of you.
Andy.
Okay, fine.
Yes, please proceed.
Yes, I think to turn on.
So,
Alright.
my name is Martine Wacky and I'm the Sheldon head volleyball coach. And I have the privilege this evening to introduce and share this amazing group of student athletes. Our volleyball season starts mid-August, but many of these athletes are conditioning and preparing for the season way all summer and in our off season. During our season, they train, they compete 5 to 6 days a week, all through early November. 2.5 to 3 hour practices, long bus rides, while maintaining the full course load. We had to be driven and dedicated. I'm so proud to say that our team's average GPA is a 3.8, with many of our team enrolled in National Honor Society, IHS, IB, AP courses, dual immersion, and involved with our ASB and multi-sport athletes. Awesome. This team came in with big goals, achievable goals, and the dream to win the state title. We talked daily about our goals, positionally, mentally, physically, what we needed from each other. We had great practices, we had hard practices. We often reminded each other that every ball touch mattered, and it could be the touch that could make us win state. Heading into the state tournament, only 2 of our players had ever been there due to COVID. This environment would be like nothing else we had seen all year. Portland Salem teams busing hundreds of their students for every match from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and they cheer on their teams and literally shake the entire gym. It's a new gym, new lines, new officials. We were on the side of the bracket that we wanted to be on. With each round, we adapted, we found our way, building confidence and excitement. We were getting closer each match to getting to face the team we were 0-3 all season. The team we all wanted to beat. November 5th, a day I know we will all remember. We were ready, we were prepared. We absolutely just had to play fully and devoted for each other. We felt so much support from teams around Oregon that day wishing us luck. Nelson, Westview, Roseburg, showing up to cheer and fill our student section in their homemade Sheldon t-shirts. Our parents competing with 300+ Jesuit students. It was absolutely a beautiful scene. It was up to us. Losing the first set, we were not rattled. I could see the fight in your eyes. We played the next 3 sets beautifully. It was almost flawless. The momentum was in our court and we finished. We're so strong together. Congratulations on being the first Sheldon volleyball team to win state and for representing 4J with the volleyball state title since Churchill did in 1974.
Wow.
Announce your name, you just wave. Junior outside hitter number 12, Emma Brown, is at a violin lesson right now. Senior setter number 13, Bo Brugman. Basketball for Northwest Nazarene University next fall. She's first team all league, first team all state, first team all tournament team, candidate for Gatorade Player of the Year. Senior libero number 14, Ellie Bergman. Playing volleyball for Eastern Washington next year. First team all league, first team all state, and first team all tournament team. Senior outside hitter number 8, Gwen Fife. Playing beach volleyball for the University of Utah next fall. First team all league, all state team honorable mention, and 6A finals player of the match. Senior middle blocker number 11, Gabriella Harms, who we missed all season with an injury, but absolutely part of the team. Gabby will be attending Northwest Nazarene University next fall as a triathlete. Junior setter number 7, Alyssa Lilly. All league. Senior setter opposite number 16, Alessia Labasi. Next fall, she'll be back in Italy, completing her senior year of high school. Junior outside hitter number 12, Jordan McKibben. Junior libero number 4, Reagan Miller. Middle blocker number 6, Gracie Robertson. Senior middle blocker number 5, Jaden Sprouse. University next fall. Freshman outside hitter number 10, Tiana Tuyuli. Senior middle blocker number 1, Caitlin Wood. For Rocky Mountain College next fall. First team all league, second team all state, 17 kills, 0 errors in our state final match. Shout out to our amazing team manager, senior Shayna Landrum. Did I say that wrong?
No, that's right.
Forever thank you to Ricky Rodriguez for being the AD who jumps in and helps whenever and wherever needed. Laura Baker, our athletic trainer, who's just a gift to our athletes, to our families, who supported us every day in so many ways. Team, I thank you for your incredible season. One state, one dream.
And what's our coach's name?
Me?
Yeah.
Martine?
Martine. Great job.
She was also the coach of the year.
Where are the fans? Congratulations. Really, that's.
I want to say thank you to the students for coming back and allowing us to have the opportunity to honor them. That was a tremendous accomplishment and they deserve their time. Jumping right back in where we were, let us vote on calling the question. All those in favor of calling the question, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I see, I can't see Alicia. Oh, there's Alicia. Okay, I see ayes from Michelle Shu, Meyer Bassa, Judy Newman, and Gordon Lafer and Kirti Hasija Kaufman. All those opposed to calling the question, raise your hand and say nay. I don't see votes from either Laurel or Alicia, and we are obligated to vote.
I think,
I apologize. I don't know what we're calling the question on. It was a little bit of a space in there. So if you would mind.
Yeah, we're voting to call the question on Gordon's request to add as an item for action, action on the complaint that we heard in executive session. So I will ask for the vote one more time since it wasn't clear. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, I still see ayes from Michelle Shu, Meyer Bassa, Judy Newman, Kirti Hasija Kaufman, and Gordon Lafer. All those opposed to calling the question, raise your hand and say nay. I see nays from Alicia Hayes and Laurel O'Rourke. Calling the question passes, so I will now call the question. All those in favor of adding as an item for action, taking action on the complaint we just heard in executive session, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. I see 6 hands raised saying aye. That would be Michelle Shu, Alicia Hayes, Ira Bassa, Kirti Hasija Kaufman, Judy Newman, and Gordon Lafer. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. I see Laurel O'Rourke's hand raised. That passes 6-1. We will add that item for action. Next, are there any objections? Please speak up if you have an objection to add as an item for information board goals. Okay, I see Gordon raising his hand. In that case, Laurel, this was your suggestion. Would you please make a motion?
yes, I make a motion for me to bring up a suggestion of 3 board goals for us to work on this year. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It means we have the discussion and they are things that we've already talked about. So I believe it'll move forward for us to work on something this year since we only have a few months left. So, sorry, my motion is to bring board goals to the meeting to have a discussion about it today.
So I'm gonna
I can't,
that, and you can let me know if I get.
I can,
Laurel is moving to add as an item for information, 3 board goals that she would like to suggest. Is that correct, Laurel?
yes,
Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Judy Newman. Is there any discussion? Gordon?
I don't want to belabor this, and I don't have any problem just hearing what the 3 goals are, but I know that we've talked about scheduling a work session to have a more comprehensive discussion on our goals, and I feel like that would be a better place to do it, and I don't want to kind of like back our way into that discussion tonight, because I think it's a long discussion that requires a lot of consideration, has a lot of different moving parts, and I'd rather have the time to do that. So if it's just a presentation of ideas for 3 goals, I'm happy to hear that. And I don't feel that strongly about this. I don't want to make us debate this a long time. If everybody else wants to do it, it's fine. I'm not going to say any more on this, but that's my concern.
Laurel?
yes, I mean, fair enough, Gordon. We've already spent over 6 hours on board goals. So I'm just trying to actually, using what we've already talked about, make a suggestion, and if the board agrees to it, then we move forward with that. That's simple enough. I think we all have the emotional intelligence, at least I hope we do, to have a fair discussion on that.
Are there any other comments? All those in favor of adding an item for information, Laurel's suggestion for 3 board goals, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay, I see yeses from Laurel O'Rourke, Judy Newman, and Alicia Hayes. All those opposed, and Kirti Hasija Kaufman. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. Nay. I see Michelle Shu, Myra Vasa, and Gordon Lafer. The motion passes 4-3. We will add that item for information. That leaves us with the item for information, board communication, the request to add that. Gordon has indicated that he is not in favor of that. And so Laurel, would you please make a motion?
I make a motion to have a discussion about policy, board policy on what would be acceptable communication between board members.
Is there a second? Do you hear Judy, Laurel?
Can I
What?
make a comment to the motion? See if you'd accept it or not.
Sure, I just want you to know that there's a delay that keeps happening. I don't know if it's happening to other people online, but it's just, it'll catch up. But if I'm not answering right away, it's because I didn't hear you.
So my friendly amendment is that I would like to put this on as a future agenda item because it's a really important topic, and if we're going to talk about policies, I don't even know what policies we're going to amend, and I'm very much in favor of having this conversation. So I'd like to suggest that we put it at the end of we put it on an agenda for a meeting date certain, maybe next month, so we know what we're looking at. That's my thought.
My only worry about that is I have been blocked repeatedly by Maya and Gordon in putting things on the agenda. And so that's the reason I have to do it at the beginning of the meeting. I absolutely would use that system if I thought it would work, but I'm told things will go and be done another way, and then they don't happen at all. So I don't I don't know what to do in that, except that my voice is being blocked by our leadership.
So you're not accepting the friendly amendment? Is there a second to the original motion? Alicia, are you seconding it? Okay, the motion is to add as an item for information, a discussion around a policy pertaining to board communication, moved by Laurel and seconded by Alicia Hayes. Is there discussion? Gordon?
I think there's actually a legal question here, and I don't think we have the information. Laurel, I believe your characterization of the law is not right, but I'm not a lawyer and you're not a lawyer, and I feel like what makes sense to me as a first step is to, if there's a legal question about what kind of records, I feel like we should get the legal answer about what kind of records have to be retained, what kind of messaging is okay and not, and to have a discussion of accusations based on law, that on opinions about law, which without us actually getting the information from a lawyer, feels to me like it's going to be an inflamed discussion that gets nowhere. And I would rather have a first step that actually is getting information from some kind of attorney that the district asked to look into this. Thanks.
Alicia?
Thanks, Maya. I seconded it because that is the exact conversation I wanted to have. I'm not sure what, I know Laurel called out signal, and there may be other things like Maya, your email to all of us about not starting an email with "don't respond, but here's my thoughts." I think there's all of that wrapped into it. That's why I want to put it on the agenda. If it doesn't go on the agenda, we'll put it on and get 3 votes to put it on at a future meeting. Because my understanding, just very confusing, that I don't know what signal is, but I know that 3 board members don't use it and 4 board members do. And so it's confusing to me why that is. And so I want to have that discussion as well. Thanks.
Is there any other discussion? Laurel, do you have your hand raised again? Just want to make
Yes.
sure that neither Kirti or Michelle who haven't spoken, do either of you want to speak? No? Laurel?
The characterization that this is an accusation is also, again, characterizing me as an attacking Black woman, and that is inappropriate. What I'm trying to do is look at our ethics and make sure we're behaving appropriately. And so we as board members can make a decision of what our policy is. Yes, I know we have board members right now who do not follow our policies, but I think that they'll be held accountable for that in the long run. So while absolutely we should have a lawyer talk to us, I think starting the discussion, knowing what is happening and having the discussion and bringing it out into the open is really important. And it's not just about signal. It's like what Alicia said. I'm sure we all have different opinions about this. We are 7 equal board members. And it's important that we remember that we're all equal and to behave as such and not use systems against other board members, because that's inequitable. And it's also unethical. Thanks.
Michelle?
I believe we should have an attorney answer our questions versus making decisions that may be misinformed. And if there are board members who are not following policies, I would like to have clarity on that as well, because I believe that it's happening also.
I'll add myself. Oh, Kirti, you go first, and then I'm adding myself to the queue behind you.
So I am in support for the information component of this, and I'm in support of having the legal thing. So I don't know if how we can do that to meet Laurel's request for the information to get that policy in place, informed by legal counsel. So I don't know if that is offering, I know a friendly amendment to have that an item for information and or action informed by legal counsel or with legal counsel, or can we put that as an exec session conform, like, I mean, I guess I'm asking for some response to that, because I like, yes, on the information, yes, with the proper protocol in place to inform us of like what is actually acceptable and not, because you know,
So-
like I am as ignorant as anybody on what actual acceptability is. So I guess any clarity around that, because I'm not opposed to the actual principle of what Laurel is trying to get at. I guess I'm just trying to like, does that need to be in a board meeting prior to us having that information? Does that need to be in an exec session and then take a vote on it afterwards? Once a policy is put into place, that needs to be gone through the public policy process of going through the legal process of the first rewrite of it and whatever. I know, because we have a policy process of actually having to write the policy and then have it put out in public and all that fun stuff. So anyways, this is a long way of saying that yes to both of those things. I'm not sure how to put that on the agenda to meet both of those requirements.
Okay, I think we have the mechanism of bringing it up at the end of the meeting to be brought to leadership. Right now, the motion is, do we bring this as an item for information now? And I personally can't support it for the reasons that folks have mentioned, which is we do not have the legal expertise here to inform us, and we will be initiating the conversation irresponsibly, in my opinion. So I can't support it. I do support having it with the proper expertise guiding us. Gordon and then Alicia, and then I think we need to.
Yeah.
Andy and then Alicia, I'm sorry, he hasn't spoken yet. Gordon's on cutting him button.
Just wanted to clarify, be it at the beginning, throughout, or at the end of the process, legal review will be a critical component of all policy development. Just as a reminder, no policy would be likely adopted by the board without legal review.
Gordon?
I just want to say super briefly that I would also support what you were saying, Kirthi, and what I think that was how I understood Judy's proposal as well, that we say at the end of the meeting, we want to do this. And then I think what that looks like is either something in writing, or maybe it sounds more likely, it might be more useful to actually have a meeting with an attorney to get a briefing, which I think Maya actually offered an email a while ago. And that I don't think that has to be executive session, that can be public session. And then that could be a starting place. And then after knowing what the law is, we can make whatever policy we want. Thanks.
Alicia?
Thanks, and thanks, Superintendent, for that commitment to making sure that legal sees our policies. I think that is incredibly important. For me to have the conversation today would be to formulate questions for legal counsel. I don't think we shouldn't be on for action or anything, but I'm curious if it doesn't go forward. That's my goal of putting it to start the conversation tonight. It may be that we started in 2 weeks. And kind of bring it in to have the conversation, to formulate the questions, and then bring in legal. So however that works is fine. I just really want to make sure that we as a board get to have that conversation. Thanks.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adding it to the agenda tonight, raise your hand and say aye. Oh, now I can't see everyone. I see 3 hands raised, Judy, Alicia, and Laurel. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. Okay. I see 4 hands raised, Myra Boswick, Gordon Laker, and Kirti Hasija Kaufman, and Michelle Shea. Is there any objection to removing from the consent agenda the memorandum of agreement with OSEA regarding landscaping contracts? Please speak up if you object. Okay. Judy, did you suggest?
Yeah. I'm gonna suggest that, we even bump up the Lane ESD agenda item till right now, because I know they have somewhere to be. As a first item on the agenda.
Do we have any more students?
Is that?
Not sure where we are on the agenda, but I think we can go in here because this week before we'll be okay soon.
Okay.
I think we're pleased where we're.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, next on the agenda is introduction of guests and superintendent's report. Superintendent Dye, you have the floor.
Thank you. Board Chair Abassa, members of the board, listening audience, and those of you who are sitting with us here in the room this evening. This past week, I've been mapping out some of the work required of us throughout the remainder of the year to set our district up for success next year. Monday, the board and budget committee members gathered online for the first of several conversations about how we budget and allocate resources to best serve our students. We continue to engage in important conversations regarding the transition to a new high school schedule designed to provide more support to students on their respective pathways to graduation. We're evaluating next year's academic calendar. Thank you everyone who's provided feedback, and we encourage those of you that haven't to please let us know your thoughts. We've also are in initial conversations around staffing allocations for the coming fiscal year. Each of these topics by themselves is complex and solicit a variety of opinions on how to best address the challenges that we face. With this in mind, we also gathered this week with district leaders, district directors, cabinet leaders, equity managers, leadership from each of our respective partner associations to continue to refine how we make our decisions. As a team, we reaffirmed our commitment to working to ensure quality decisions are made throughout the district. We will focus on supporting a quality decision-making process centered on established and shared values rather than on individual advocacy or convenience. During that meeting, we collectively acknowledged our decisions may not always be the most popular, but would be those we felt were best given the district's goals and the district's values and the district's needs and the needs of our students and families. In the coming weeks, we will be scheduling budget roadshow meetings with colleagues across the district to help meet the goal of meaningful engagement. We'll be sharing how Oregon school districts are funded and how our resources are allocated. It's my hope that these meetings will provide clarity as to how budgets are built. I'm out of time. How budgets are built and allow staff to share their insight into what they believe will make our commitment to access and advancement possible for our most underserved students. Additionally, you'll receive information tonight about the fiscal impact of maintaining or removing the existing North Eugene High School building once our students and staff occupy the new building. I want to acknowledge the unfinished work to support the Kelly Middle School and Eugene Dock-Wynn Elementary School communities in terms of a finalized plan for their future locations. Rest assured, the needs of those school communities has not been forgotten, as we recently met with representatives of both buildings to discuss space allocation needs, fixture and furnishing requests, as well as renovation and new construction plans. I look forward to keeping our school board and community updated on that progress as we move forward. And I'd like to draw your attention, if you haven't seen it, to yesterday's Register Guard article that featured the work of our Future Build students, who are pilot members of the Center for Applied Learning. It draws from high school students across our district to blend interdisciplinary learning together with practical hands-on application. I'll leave you with that teaser, as next week I will be sharing in greater detail about the progress of that program. And to end my comments, I just want to again recognize the hard work, dedication, and success of the women's volleyball team at Sheldon High School. I appreciate the fact that they stayed with us this evening and that they gave us the chance to clap for them. Congratulations.
Thank you, Superintendent Dye. Next on the agenda is the receiving of reports from high school student representatives. Is there someone who would like to go first? Chaz?
Sorry about that. While I am disheartened at the display that happened earlier this meeting, I'm very happy to have the opportunity to give this report about Sheldon High School. Earlier last week, Sheldon's ASB Executive Board met with our administration and counselors to discuss our school's mental health resources. At our upcoming assembly tomorrow, members of our counseling staff will be giving a presentation about these resources to our students. And the Executive Board is planning numerous initiatives to continue visibility and publicity of these resources to fulfill the need on our campus. We're kicking off our Black History Month celebration with various events planned by both BSU and ASB. Tomorrow, BSU will start by giving a presentation during the assembly, and ASB will be continuing with poster campaigns throughout our school. We hosted a career fair for our senior class with representatives from various local businesses that help connect our students to future aspirations and members of their community. Numerous staff and student groups are planning events for Counselor Appreciation Week upcoming, and we hope to honor the staff that work so hard within our buildings. Our Sources of Strength program celebrated reaching their survey goal about coping strategies for midterm stress. We'll be celebrating with a display of methods and a lunch celebration tomorrow afternoon. And finally, Sheldon's NHS is hosting tutoring during midterms and is planning on blood drive for February 15th.
Thank you, Chaz. Who wants to go next? Oh, Jasmine, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine Darmati and I am a student representative from South Eugene High School. Last weekend we were able to host our winter formal and it was a success with over 600 students attending. Now I'd like to shift the topic a little bit and I want to bring up a widespread concern that students and teachers both have about the new semester schedule for next year. Multiple AP teachers at South Eugene have calculated that students will get 44 hours less of learning time prior to the May exam date. Taking AP classes for 3 years now, I've noticed that teachers have already been struggling to complete AB and IB curricula before the exam dates, and I believe that the semester schedule makes this struggle worse. Obviously, this new schedule doesn't only affect students who are taking AP and IB classes, but generally speaking, the semester schedule would affect all year-round classes as we would be losing a total of 52 hours in the school year. It was also brought to my attention that 0 periods would be removed as a result of the semester schedule. At South, our 0 periods consist of student government, orchestra, and choir. And I couldn't imagine such classes being moved to after school, as most students have school commitments. So I guess my question is, when would the 0 period classes take place? Additionally, given that most teachers rely on Canvas now to accept assignments from students, the semester schedule can put even more academic pressure on students, as teachers may feel it's necessary, given the decrease in class time, to make homework due the next day instead of the next flex day. I also hope there will be some sort of buffer around the amount of AP classes students can take, because I can only imagine students feeling pressured to take 8 AP classes now that it has been made an option. I'm sure South Eugene isn't the only high school with a competitive environment, but given the 8 periods and less class time, the semester schedule can be mentally and physically draining for students without policies put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Parker, are you ready? Thank you.
I'd also like to start with a few concerns that North has had recently, or a few concerns that I've noticed in North. One being that during COVID and around the time of COVID, there was a lot of talk about mental health within the school system as we were all quarantined at home. And I would like to restate, I think some of the previous meeting, that that is still an issue even once we are back together, and that mental health is still an important thing to have our schools be focusing on. And at least over at North, I know that we have programs available, and we have hoots in our school 4 days a week, and we have our student health center, but these are programs that don't feel like they're hugely acknowledged and talked about enough. We have posters around our school that are these standard paper size black and white posters that have a large QR code and very little information hidden at the bottom, and you really can't find any information about these programs out consistently in most areas of the school. Even the ones that do are hugely public hallway areas where getting support can be scary sometimes, and not having that be something that's openly put out there largely in private areas where students may feel more comfortable accessing them is partially an issue. And it's really important that students who want to have help can really access that. And so just more constant, available, easy to access info about those programs would be great, because destigmatizing struggles with mental health is something that's really important. And it feels like by putting those programs there, then kind of having them feel more hidden away, whether purposely or not purposely, feels like it still stigmatizes that even though those are there, maybe they shouldn't be used. And it's really important to push that those are there and available and okay, and everyone who wants support should be able to receive that. Another large issue that's been at North for a while now, that doesn't feel like really any progress has been made towards fixing it, is there is a lot of drug use in terms of vape throughout the school, and often any of the bathrooms in the school are used almost exclusively, especially during passing periods, as places where groups of students will gather and just vape. And it feels like that has been something that has been talked about throughout the school for a long time now, and that there has been no noticeable action that has happened to like prevent that, as it is not stopped at all. And it's something that is daily talked about by students as a complaint, both to teachers and other students. I think the final anxiety caused around the school is also on teachers, who I know it feels like that there's been, at least to a point with this new building, that we have a certain lack of clarity with the process of moving over to it. That's caused a little bit of anxiety and frustration. That teachers have yet to be inside the building and get to see what it's going to look like once they're in there. And that they don't know what their room numbers will be yet, or like what that's going to get once you're actually inside. And I know moving forward, a little more clarity would be greatly appreciated with helping to ease that anxiety and frustration, as well as potentially aim to view the school at the nearest opportunity. And then to end on a slightly more lighthearted note, our winter formal was postponed, but is now spring fling that will be beach themed. The affinity groups are going to be holding a Valentine's Day dance for some of the affinity group members. Our prom theme has been picked out, though it is yet to be announced. And our members of our theater troupe this Saturday will be going to compete in regionals.
Thank you, Parker. Go ahead, thank you.
Okay, hi everybody, my name is Emily Shaver, I'm from Churchill High School. Happy February, happy Black History Month, and happy National Girls and Women in Sports Day. At Churchill, about 2 weeks ago, we had our MLK assembly, excuse me. It was a success, I would say. I really enjoyed it. This week at Churchill, our Mike's Closet, which is a free clothing service for students at Churchill, and the clothing in there is donated and purchased all by Churchill families. And this week we are giving out winter coats before school for anybody who may need them. Let's see, everyone at Churchill, I think, is looking forward to the month of February. We have a winter formal dance with an accompanying spirit week. Our choir program is doing Singing Valentines, which I just think is super fun. And and then our ASB leadership will be hosting a dress swap with that Mike's Closet that I mentioned earlier for formal wear leading up to the dance. I agree with Parker that we need to continue to push those mental health resources and make them known for people. I know we have them, I know they're hidden away, but I don't think a lot of people know about them. And I also want to talk about a concern that I also had with the semester schedule. I kind of aired Jasmine's thoughts there with the 0 period. I actually serving as the student body president at Churchill right now, and I can't imagine having to do all that work after school. And I'm actually also a 2-sport athlete, so taking time away from sports after school to work on something that I could do in the morning, that's a little bit of a concern for me personally. Let's see. Our theater department is getting ready for our spring musical, which is going to be Seussical, and they're having auditions next week. At the end of this month, our BSU will be putting on Black Excellence Week, which is a week where they have an assembly, advisory lesson, and fun activities throughout the week. They did it last year, and I really liked it. Let's see. Just some last thoughts. Things are starting to ramp up for seniors who are finishing up important applications and their LEAP projects, which is a graduation requirement at Churchill. And let's see. We had an OSAC, which is the Oregon Scholarships application something. Earlier today, there was a workshop where kids could get resources to help them fill out those applications to receive money to go to college. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, I believe that's all the comments we'll be hearing tonight. Thank you to all the students for sharing with us and giving us that insight and window into your school. Next on the agenda is items raised by the audience. The school board receives written comments by email at board@4j.lane.edu and sets aside time in each regular board meeting to hear public comment. Community members can sign up to speak to the board by submitting their request online at 4j.lane.edu/board/public comment or contact the superintendent's office. The deadline is the Monday before each meeting. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes and cannot give their time to another speaker. A timekeeper will show a sign when the speaker has 30 seconds left and when their time is up. Speakers may offer objective comments or criticism about district operations and programs. For complaints about individuals, the district has a board policy and complaint process. Please contact the superintendent's office at 541-790-7707 for more information about submitting a formal complaint. Tonight we have 2 speakers signed up to give us public comment. And Debbie, if you are ready, will you announce the first speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker tonight is Tasha Webb, who is to be in person. Doesn't appear that Tasha is here. So we have our second speaker is Craig Gibbons.
Hi, my name is Craig Gibbons. Went to River Road Grade School, Kelly Middle School, and North Eugene High School. I am here tonight to ask you to save North Eugene High School, not just for my nostalgic reasons, but for the sake of our River Road, Santa Clara community. I am a historian by education and nature. I have watched all my life as older Eugene buildings were demolished rather than modernized, preserved, and reused. Please do not demolish the old North Eugene High School building. The aesthetic of the building is reason enough not to destroy it. It is a mid-century modern gem of a building. The construction of the building is a memorial to our town. The materials reflect the end of Eugene's old growth-based timber economy and culture. The building is an irreplaceable monument to the materials and the people that built Eugene. The building itself has so much usable space: gymnasiums, an auditorium with a stage and fly gallery, cafeteria, large spaces, and small spaces. I know that 4J is an educational institution, not a park and rec district, but I reimagined the old North Eugene High School building as a community center serving many people in many different ways. Now, I spent my career working in municipal finance for school districts, cities, and urban renewal districts. I understand the financial argument in favor of demolition. I also understand SDCs. I've created them and worked with them for most of my career. They're negotiable. I also understand the need for more athletic fields at this school. But I don't think that means demolishing the whole school building. I think there's room to move on these things. The building is our heritage and our future. Well, it can be our future. Please do not rush to a decision that destroys the heritage and forecloses on that future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Craig. Next on the agenda is comments by employee groups, and there are no comments being delivered tonight. So we move on to comments and committee reports by individual board members. Who would like to go first? Michelle?
I'll be quick. I attended a library and an introductory library advisory of educators, administrators, librarians, and one community parent. And we are tasked with reviewing the pilot program of elementary school teacher librarians, which are at 3 schools, Holt, Howard, and Chavez. What was revealed was that many of us do not know the role of teacher librarians. We were able to guess about 20% of what they actually do. And when we were given their job descriptions, it's 5.5 pages long. It's very detailed, and they cover a lot. They have a lot of skills, talents, and responsibilities. I also attended my first North Region meeting. I believe it was the first meeting since Dr. Dye became superintendent. So it just felt very new, and there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to brainstorm, and I know that this board is very committed to prioritizing the needs of the North Region and County and YG in particular. And we will be talking about North Eugene High School today. I'll be interested to see what's presented. And yeah, I think with a lot of contribution from educators and staff, as well as commitment from our board and the administration, as Andy had mentioned earlier, we can come up with some thoughtful solutions, and I look forward to seeing what can be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Kirti?
Hi, everyone. I'll also keep this brief. I apologize for missing the last board meeting, so I didn't get a chance to reflect a little bit on the legislative breakfast that we had. I appreciate everybody's comments and especially the student comments that were there. I know Judy's going to be bringing up a couple of things on here. Well, first of all, before we start about that, I just wanted to say congratulations also to our student athletes and the volleyball team. I have zero athletic tendencies and zero coordination. So that you're doing that and the love and support that you have for each other is very visible, and the respect and the support that you have from your team and your communities is also very, very apparent in the way you discuss each other and talk about the kinds of work that you all have been doing. So I really applaud that. Something I've been noodling on for a long time is this notion of resilience. And we've been living in a time where it almost feels like, we get applauded for resilience, but you almost feel like you don't want to be resilient anymore. Like, we should have the mental health supports, and we should have communities that take care of us, and we should have schools and libraries and other ways to be able to be supported, that resilience isn't looked upon as this thing that you should be achieving at all times as a means of some sort of amazing thing that you have accomplished in your life. And I think that school systems and teachers and students are we're applauded with this notion that because you're resilient, you have achieved things, and we're not always looking at the toll it takes. So something that came out of our legislative breakfast and some of the work that's being done through our student organizations on the need for mental health supports has become very apparent. Not that it wasn't apparent before, but we're hoping to take a deeper look at that and see what we can do. The other thing that Judy's going to talk about that I think is extremely important, Laurel said something at the legislative breakfast that really stuck with me, which was skills before bills. And it was in regards to CTE and talking about how do we set up a foundation for children where they're set up for life outside of just a traditional academic and four-year degree or whatever that is. And I keep thinking of those kinds of skills that we always look at those as something that happens after you graduate or something you have to in secondary education. And those are all skills and foundational skills that happen the minute you enter an educational setting. And for us, that's like early childhood, and we don't ever think about that as something. And those foundations that we have to build in critical thinking and emotional support and just being able to address your feelings and analysis and all the key things that you think of that you want your children to grow up and have in any kind of career, in any kind of life skills you have, start at the earliest levels. It doesn't happen in high school. It doesn't happen in middle school. If it's not happening at that earliest level, like, we've already set ourselves up for so much more harder work for our teachers, our communities, our children as they grow out into the world. So Judy's going to talk a little bit, like I said, about some of the things that are coming up that are legislative priorities for us, both from early childhood and from the CT perspective. And I want us to start thinking about the foundational components of it. Like, we have an opportunity now to build a system that doesn't require children to be resilient all the time, because we can start building foundational components that can allow them to be strong and be able to support themselves and their communities and their mental health and their academic and creative achievements and accomplishments as they continue in their academic and educational and life beyond that. So that's where I am right now. Congratulations again to the team. I'm super excited. And just one last thing, I just want to tell my fellow board members, my 9-year-old is putting together a petition to bring back cookies and chocolate milk. So I may have an item for future action that has been she's collecting signatures and I'm promoting civic engagement. So just an FYI, they might be showing up on a future agenda item for us to vote on.
Thanks, Kathy. I'll go back and forth, the screen and in person. Judy, you're next. Oops.
Good evenings. A few meetings ago, I talked about the civil rights journey that I got to go on this November with the 4J team and some other members from our community. And tonight I wanted to highlight one of the places that we visited during that journey because it feels particularly relevant at this time and specifically this week. In Montgomery, Alabama, we visited the Equal Justice Initiative Memorial to Peace and Justice. It's the first memorial for victims of lynching in this country. The center of the memorial has over 800 steel monuments that hang, and you walk through them gradually going downhill till you're underground. There's a steel monument for each county in the United States where a racial terror lynching took place, and the names of the lynching victims are engraved on the columns. There's a wall of water that felt like a continuous tears falling, and a green space on a slight hill that looked like the center of town, where places where lynchings often took place with a white audience. I cannot adequately describe the overwhelming and powerful experience that was. The National Memorial is meant to inspire communities across the nation to enter into the era of truth-telling about racial injustice and their own local histories. The Oregon Remembrance Project and the Cruise History Museum in Coos Bay is the only Oregon community that's participated to date. They placed a historical marker in memory of the 1903 lynching of Alonzo Tucker from the soil from where he was lynched, and it gets buried with the memorial plaque. And today is February 1st, the first day of Black History Month. And I wanted to express my outrage and devastation about the latest event in our current perpetuation of the history of violence against Black people in our country. This week, we witnessed once again the brutal murder of a Black man, Tyree Nichols, which painfully reflects much of our past Black history. And I struggle for the words to express my sorrow about the continued flagrant disregard of humanity and the violence by humans against humans. I don't really know what to say, but staying silent isn't really a choice. We saw it on video again, and we must stand up against these acts of violence and work together to create a new present and future and stop perpetuating and reliving our unforgivable past. An example of this hope for a better future was our visit to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which followed our visit to the memorial for the lynchings in this country. We stopped and gathered around the peaceful Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Fountain across from the Southern Poverty Law Center building, which to me and many others represents positive and just actions and a more hopeful present and future. I share this experience tonight with you in hope that we can make this, we can make a commitment to work together to stop this violence and build a more just present and future. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Gordon?
Thank you. Like Judy, I feel like I don't know what to say, but that there's no way to start without noting and honoring the life and death of Tyrone Nichols and the importance of us locally redoubling our commitment to anti-racist education. In terms of what we have been doing, I also was thrilled to see the story on construction education. I've been an advocate and supporter of that for several years, and I'm thankful to Superintendent Dye for making it happen. It's great to see so many students learning construction skills and building homes for unhoused people. And I'd like to see that expanded and do a lot more of both of those. And I think that we should and can be thinking about how to build on construction in combination potentially with academic subjects. We could run construction and design, construction and math, construction and homeless policy. And I hope we're able to move in that direction. being able to have more construction education, more creative classes, and other kinds of enriched CTE, and especially to enable students to participate in CTE programs that aren't based at their own home schools, depends on the details of how we implement the new high school schedule. To get that right, it's critical that that process is based on full collaboration with educator staff at every step of the process. And though I support the new schedule, I think, as Jasmine Darmati's made clear, having student voice as a serious component of this process is also critical to making sure we get it right. I'm looking forward to hearing the report about North Eugene High School later tonight, and I thank Maya and Michelle for serving on that committee. I want to hear what the plans are, but to say the obvious, we need to ensure that the decision is made with community input and to best serve community needs, meaning both people who live in the community, students, parents, and staff, and especially in light of the long-standing and still unresolved issue of doing right by the Kelly and YG communities, we need to make sure it's done that way. I want to briefly mention something else about libraries that thank you, Michelle, for taking the lead on this. We've been talking for a while about the library challenge policy, which is the question of what should happen when somebody in the community challenges books or other curriculum materials that are in our libraries or in our curriculum. And I'm glad to see that the district has adopted an administrative rule about that. I think there are some changes that would be good to make, including guaranteeing that librarians and classroom teachers are always playing a central role in the review committees, and to make sure that librarians are informed of every challenge because they need to report it to the national organizations that track this. And I think it's important that we back up the administrative rule that the district has put in place with actual board policy about this, so that no teacher or principal is in the position of having to figure out how to respond to something like that on their own, and we have a system in place. I think this may be part of what is involved in the legislative report, but I just wanted to mention that I know that there is legislation in Salem that would allow school staff to administer medication to prevent accidental opioid overdose, and that would protect the school against any potential liability for that. And that seems to me like smart legislation. I know the Portland public schools are on record supporting it, and I hope that we can move towards doing the same here. And the very last thing is, I've seen a lot of discussion online about the new AI, about ChatGPT, both at the higher ed level and at school level, not just in Eugene, but across the country, and most about how it might impact assignments, grading, and cheating. And people, teachers worrying about, or professors worrying about how to cheat proof things now with the new generation of generative AI. I think there's a number of things challenging about this. But that this is a moment that reinforces the need to move away from a view of education that's obsessively focused on tests and assessment. A moment that forces us to remember that the point of education isn't to teach students how to write essays, but to help them understand the world and themselves in it. That we're trying to help students grow up to be full, competent, and confident adults, that usually teachers who are given the time and space to form real relationships with their students can tell this without standardized tests. And that as we confront the moment of this kind of generative AI, we have to do it not by focusing on how to design tests that are cheating proof, but to make sure that what we're doing is focused on developing and enriching students as human beings and not training them in memorization skills. I think figuring out the right response to AI is something that's going to take time, that can only be done in thoughtful partnership with educators. And I hope this is something we can start in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Alicia?
Thanks, Maya. Judy, I just want to thank you for sharing your experience. That was powerful. And it just does remind me that the work we do to attempt to be anti-racist requires us to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, to question, and to give space to learn. And I appreciate you sharing your experience with us. Tonight, I want to say that the one committee I did attend in the last 2 weeks was the budget committee, budget kickoff. It was very exciting. We appreciate all the past budget committee members agreeing to serve again, and welcome Eric Richardson, who is one of our new budget committees. The presentation showed that we are building our budget, our 4J budget, not only on revenue, but on reserves. And we do have a lot of reserves, and that is because past boards have tried to hold enough reserves to keep us from being on a roller coaster ride of laying people off when we get less money than expected. And we also have large reserves because of COVID, because of the money we received, the additional money we received, the fact that we couldn't hire teachers, couldn't hire classified staff, and we couldn't get the materials, some of the things we wanted. So we had a big reserve. So it's not a problem now to build your budget. But as you looked out, and if I see we have a lot of people here tonight. We didn't have that many on the budget committee. So I'm going to just take a second and say, as you look out and you look into the next couple of years, we're building our budget on not only on revenue, but on reserves. And we are not replenishing those reserves, as I wouldn't expect we would, because they were so high. But we are going to run into a problem. We're going to run into a cliff in about 3 to 4 years. And as a school board, we have very few choices when that happens. When you look at the graph that was presented by staff, I know in past life, somebody may have called it a JAWS graph, because revenues are here down low and expenses are up, and there is a big gap. I bring that up today because we need to start dealing with that and looking at how we can look at our programs, find those efficiencies, make very tough decisions today, even though we have money, because we aren't going to in a number of years. And I don't want to leave it for 3 years where then we as a board, or you as a board, who's ever on the board, are making that painful decision between bigger classes or furlough days or both. So I look forward to working with this budget committee, and I look forward to doing the work that isn't as easy as spending, to really look at our programs and look at ways that we can ensure that we do not have that deficit, that cliff that we are facing in 3 years. So look forward to seeing everybody again in March for the budget committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Alicia. Laurel, do you want to go next?
Yes. Dear community and board and district, I made a racial discrimination complaint at the end of October against board members Maya Rabas and Judy Newman for the racial discrimination that I have been subjected to while on this board. I have repeatedly asked for different behavior from Maya, and she has ignored my requests, told me that my feelings are incorrect, and lied on her Facebook page about the complaint being unfounded. A complaint cannot be unfounded if it was never investigated. Our Eugene 4J racial harassment policy states that all racial harassment complaints will be fully investigated. Maya Rabasa knows this. She was on the committee that wrote this policy. It is not a mistake that this board did not investigate my complaint. That is the history of how Blacks are treated in this town. Gordon Lafer and Maya Rabasa asked the board to ignore it in making the motion to disregard the discrimination I was complaining about. They led this board in ignoring their own policy. The board's hired lawyer, Rich Conley, did not give accurate legal advice. The Eugene 4J district did not ensure that he was aware of all policies that pertain to racial harassment complaints. Maya was openly rude and hostile in both November meetings towards me, going so far as to silence my voice by closing the meeting early against public meeting policy. This in turn incited a racist mobbing incident on Kyle Fritz's Facebook page that was commented on almost 900 times and shared almost 800 times. I was called crazy, on drugs, drunk, unprofessional. People said the district should fire me. There was an outpouring of support for the racist behavior displayed by Maya Rabasa towards me when she silenced a Black board member's voice. If you are a student of psychology, you will notice there was not a time that I was given the assumption of equality. It was assumed that Maya Rabasa and Gordon Lafer were correct in their treatment of me. And I was a disgusting, horrible person. But I was the only person following our policy, and I was refusing to be harassed for it. I was simply asking for fair and equal treatment. This assumption of guilt happens in our schools every day. Black and Indigenous children get the assumption of guilt first, and we are taught we must prove ourselves. I will let you I will tell you there is no reason for me to speak out other than to stop biased behavior. It doesn't serve me. Their answer has been to deny and ignore. That is what racism looks like. The reason for the complaint against Maya Rabas and Judy Newman is that I felt it is important that we have a discussion as a board about what systemic racial harassment looks like. I had every belief that we would follow our policy. I had to tell Judy several times last year about choices that were made that were not equitable. Every time I talked to Judy about this, she responded that she was listening and she was looking to educate herself. She showed responsible leadership by saying she was dedicated to doing the work to be anti-racist. That is an emotionally mature and non-discriminatory response to a Black woman talking to you about racially biased treatment. The only valid response, really. I will remind you that we are told as board members that we set the example for the district. Maya's response was to ignore me directly, but to continually treat me like I was of a lower caste than her in the meetings. When I called her on it, she blatantly denied it, corrected me continually, though she is my peer on this board. The working agreements we had all agreed to last year seem to not apply to me, the Black board member. This behavior has left me to carry the emotional labor of constant redirection for her behavior. I'm talking about this because the behavior of Gordon and Maya doesn't just incite the possibility for me being harmed. It is a perfect example of what our Black students deal with daily in our schools. They are singled out, searched, watched at a higher rate than other students. That this has happened to me for 2 years and this year at an acute rate, and no one steps forward, shows that most of you do not understand anti-racist work. We as a board are broken because of racist behavior of our present leadership. Most of this community thinks racism is an unfortunate malady that Black people deal with. Black people, by pointing out racism, are not the owners of racism. We are the recipients of that bias. We know that unless all people give a damn, we will continue to be unsafe in most spaces. I am not of a different caste and will not allow the oppressive behavior displayed by Maya Rabas and Gordon Lafer. I will do this for all the children who are like me in 4J schools and believe the narrative that 4J tries to shape for our Black students. I will do this for all marginalized students. I do it because they matter. In 4J, we have whole language schools devoted to to certain cultures and languages. Black and Indigenous cultures and students do not get equitable treatment. To be unbiased, we must have schools of Black culture and language and schools of Indigenous culture and language. Our history and people lack the respect that other cultures and languages afford. Every culture can be taught in schools. Stop blocking ours. It is done to keep us weak and hopefully subservient. That type of thought process only leads to further harm. I will end with a quote. No one becomes not racist despite a tendency by Americans to identify themselves that way. We can only strive to be anti-racist on a daily basis, to continually redirect ourselves to the lifelong task of overcoming our country's racist heritage. Ibram X. Kendi. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. I think I'm the only one left. I want to once again congratulate our volleyball players and celebrate the return of the state championship after almost 50 years. I want to also acknowledge that their decision to walk out of our board meeting earlier was a really important and strong message and a reminder to us that what our priority needs to be is to focus on our students. And when they stood up and walked out, that was a blatant reminder, and I hope that we can recenter our priorities with the students in mind. I was unable to attend the budget committee meeting, but have been updated by fellow board members. And I want to extend my congratulations to Gary Campbell and Dakota Boulette for being unanimously elected to serve as chair and vice chair of the 4J Budget Committee. I'm confident you will make a wonderful team and do an excellent job leading this committee. Before I jump into tonight's edition of the Heart of 4J, I want to share that this series has proven to be so informative for me, and from the feedback I regularly receive, informative for the community as well. Speaking for myself, not only have I had the privilege of becoming acquainted with some amazing individuals, I've also gotten to know the network of folks who see and value their work and share their stories with me. Additionally, I'm learning about the actual work being done in the district in some broad areas, as well as some niche areas, if you will. This week, I've had the chance to learn so much about the work of 4J's speech and language pathologists, SLPs. In diving into learning about their work, I have become familiar with a group of SLPs doing the very focused work of supporting 4J students with augmentative and alternative communication, known as AAC. And I look forward to joining the SLP team in their monthly meeting later this month to learn even more. But for tonight, I want to introduce you to Abby Nels Lowe. Over 170 students in our district have their communication supported and uplifted by augmentative. There's my English is not my first language shining through. By augmentative and alternative communication. This support is led by our AAC team, composed of 5 speech and language pathologists and led by Abby. The work this team takes on is tremendous. They are tasked with identifying the best option for AAC. Typically, this involves a device and software. A colleague of Abby's compared learning to use these devices and their software to learning a new language. Abby and her team are tasked with not only learning these new languages, but teaching the student, their school teams, and those who care for them outside of school these new languages as well. When we start counting the numbers, it becomes staggering to think about 5 people being responsible for 170 students, plus the team of folks working with and caring for each of these young students. And it should be noted that Abby and her team do this in addition to the work they put in as speech and language pathologists in schools, carrying a caseload of students with diverse and unique needs, all the while dedicating themselves to ensuring each student is honored, uplifted, and empowered. Abby is known by her colleagues as dynamic and flexible. This is backed up by the parent of a 4J student who shared with me, because of our family's needs and work schedules, we have only been able to meet via Zoom and email. But even through this sometimes challenging medium, she has been able to help us understand this important tool. Our child uses an iPad with software called ProLoquo. As a speech and language pathologist, Abby and her colleagues work with a tremendously diverse set of needs, meeting each child where they are and bringing unique approaches to every case to aid the student as they build and expand in their communication. Her colleague notes, one of her big passions is meeting kids with complex communication needs. Again, this is supported by a 4J parent's experience. We have the not so unique complication with using devices for oral spoken communication. Not all of our words are English. She encourages us to input our lives into the device just as we are. Keep exploring sounds and gestures we use daily and to keep finding ways to make the device work for us, not us working for the device. Every week we find new words and new ways to use this speech tool. Along with this family's experience, Abby's colleagues shared with me Abby's passion for finding software that would support families who speak languages other than English. As just one example, last year she searched for and found software that would support the communication needs of the student whose familial language is Bengali. Along with serving on the SLP's Early Childhood Committee, working to ensure a smooth transition into kindergarten for preschoolers using AAC, Abby is always looking creatively at universal design for learning to dig deep into how honoring communication diversity can be supported and expanded. For example, she is keen to see AAC integrated into playground spaces. As a speech and language pathologist, Abby is committed to seeing the ways in which speech and language pathology is essential in the interrelated realms of communication, literacy, social life, and play. In closing, I offer you this experience that was shared with me. Her attitude is light, fun, and professional. I feel relaxed and trusted as the parent and expert of my child's needs when we are in meetings together. Abby has become an integral part of our child's IEP success this year. We are so lucky to have you, Abby. Thank you for leading with your heart, ensuring each child you work with is both honored and empowered. You are such an important part of the heart of 4J. Thank you. And with that, we jump ahead in the agenda as we agreed to move an item for future action, which is a report shared with us by Tony Skirto, okay, and Linda Hamilton, so that we can learn about the Lane ESD service contract.
Great, yes, I think you know Linda Hamilton, our board chair of Lane ESD, so I'm glad she's here to accompany me. Okay, all right. Well, thanks. I'm Tony Skirto, Superintendent of Lane Education Service District, and I just want to put out there that we really appreciate the partnership that we have educationally with our largest school district, our largest out of 16 districts in Lane County. And not only are you here to serve the students in your district, which is your primary responsibility, but I very much appreciate the effort that you go beyond that to actually help in the region throughout Lane County. That's exhibited in a number of ways, but one way it's exhibited is by board participation on our budget committee, and 4J is represented. I think three of your 7 board members have done that. At least 3 of you have. So what I also know is that some of you have a little more understanding of what Lane ESD services are and kind of what we do, and also realizing that some of you don't have as much information on that. So essentially in your board packet, I think you've got a link to the local service plan, which is, I believe, over 40 pages. So it's heavy documentation. I don't intend to go through all of that tonight, other than just to summarize by saying we offer our services in 4 main headings, which are kind of by statutory obligation for education service districts to offer to their component districts. Those include special education services, school improvement services, technology and services, and administrative services. Out of those 4, the 2 biggest are this special education and school improvement side. And I want to, I think, emphasize something tonight as a highlight, because not only is this Black History Month, it's also CTE, National CTE Month, and CTE has come up a couple times in discussions that I've already heard. And so as you are looking to expand options for 4J students, regardless of the high schools that they attend in your district, that effort is also extending regionally. And with that regional effort, we believe we will be providing more and more opportunities for students in Lane County. There are some things currently happening in terms of constructing a Brighter Future project, and I believe Andy might have said that there was something coming next week. I don't want to steal your thunder on that. But if you look even further down the line, there are I think some more intense opportunities for high school students, especially that 4J students, as our largest district, will be able to participate in, and also for students all throughout the county. And what I'm speaking of here is something on the horizon for next year. There's the whole project operating kind of by the leadership of St. Vincent de Paul in a building on Garfield that will have a real strong connection for students to real world experience. It also will be constructing homes. But it'll be in a setting where all aspects of the home construction, plumbing, electricity, they'll be able to engage in and do so directly with folks in the industry. There will be a couple educators on site, but there will be a lot of industry folks and these students. So we're excited about some of those common endeavors that we have in that CTE world. So that's one of the things that we're able to do, is bring about some of that regional connection. And we're hoping to see that build year by year with some things down the road in some other career technical areas, not just construction, not just the trades, but looking at healthcare occupations and other expanses that we can move into. So with that, I will kind of end this by saying that the local service plan is a very democratic process. It starts by the superintendents of each school district needing to come together and decide that these are the services that they want their ESD to offer. Happy to report that in Lane County this year on December 13th, we had a unanimous vote in 16 districts to support this local service plan. It then went to our board, and our board approved it. And then the other part of the democratic process on this is that we need votes from 16 districts. We don't need a unanimous vote, but one of the ways it works is that over half of our districts, 9 out of 16, need to vote in favor. And of those 9, we need to have a representation of more than half the students in the county. So 4J has a pretty big hold on that. And I'll ask that, we're recommending the approval coming from the 16 superintendents in Lane County, from our school board, our district board, and then knowing that it's a lot of information in there, giving the opportunity to look at that, see if there are questions we can answer tonight, or answer between now and the time you might be taking action on them. And beyond that, any other questions you may have about services, other times of the year where we're not always here in front of you, because we're not too far down the road, and we'd be glad to answer. So with that, any questions that you may have, we'd be glad to answer tonight.
Are there any questions? Judy?
I'm just saying this because I think some fellow board members may not know. Can you just list the services that we really use a lot? Like, I know we send kids to life skills classrooms, and maybe just give them just a short.
Sure, and then that life skills partnership is very strong, and there's a consortium effort that 4J participates in. But we are right now in the mid-50s in terms of students that are in life skills programs, and also speaking especially of the realm of our deaf and hard of hearing teachers, as well as the interpreters that not long ago were employees of 4J, and now we're employees of Lane ESD. So there's heavy usage there. We operate on the Westmoreland campus, former 4J school, a program called Lane School, where students who experience some challenges in a normal classroom setting are provided with more extensive supports in a temporary setting. It's not meant for those students to go there permanently, but to develop some skills and be able to transition back into the regular classroom. So I think there's, I would say, 12 or 13 students right now, or slots that 4J has in the school. So that's another students.
Are there any other questions? If there's no other questions, I'm just going to share that Superintendent Skirdo has been very welcoming of at least myself when I did have a question in the past, and sat and met with me and talked me through some of the work that I was particularly interested in. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being here in front of us, but I also appreciate your ongoing openness and welcoming of us having questions and bringing them to you.
Feel free to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for taking the time and joining us tonight.
Thanks for your time, Eugene. Appreciate it.
Of course. With that, then we do move into our consent group. There is now only one item on the consent agenda tonight. Is there a motion? Alicia?
I'll let you finish this, and then I wanted to say something.
Is there a motion? Gordon?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Moved by Gordon and seconded by Alicia. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Looks like there are 7 hands raised, and that would be ayes from Maya Rabasa, Alicia Hayes, Judy Noonan, Gordon Lafer, Laurel O'Rourke, and Kirti Hasija Kaufman. That passes unanimously. Alicia, you wanted to comment?
This is very important. It's very important. I can't see the presenters table. So I can see that it says presentation table, but we can't see anything but a lot of carpet. So if there's some way to make that happen, I saw Debbie walk by. Anyway, that's my question, my request. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, Debbie, do you know if the camera's on over there?
I think it might. I'll turn it off. Is she wanting it off?
No, she says it's not on, that she's not seeing.
You see, it's that camera isn't on.
And on.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, no,
Yes, now it's on. Can you see it, Alicia?
Yeah. Thank you, Alicia, for bringing that
I
up.
can see Debbie. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have items for information. We have several items. We'll start with the ones that were on the agenda to begin with. That is to receive a report on instruction department goals and SIA strategies. Going to be presented by Sydney Vanderkar and Brooke Wagner, or is that shifting?
That's me, both of them are out ill,
Okay.
hoping that they feel better very soon. So some of this you have seen, and that's purposeful. We want to continue to remind members of the board, members of the listening audience, members of the community that take a look at the integrated guidance process. It's new this year, and it has multiple steps designed to grade funding and help us to create a more integrated plan. It deals with high school success dollars, the student investment account, general fund, CTE, attendance support and programs, and early indicator and intervention systems. Again, this is something that you've seen in the past. So the integrated guidance and our three big rocks are very well aligned. We continue to focus on engaging the community and providing timely communication, advancing equity within the district such that all students have the opportunity to pursue their life as they would like, but that we have an amplified focus on the needs and desires of historically underserved populations, and a well-rounded education. Good school experience is more than a series of classes that they take throughout the day. There are several stages of the integrated guidance process. We have conducted and are continuing to conduct an evaluation, engaging throughout the year, and we will continue to do so in community engagement strategies to get more information. We will be presenting tonight for the first time a review of the strategies that we will use to get after the three big rocks. Then our finance department and administrative staff will need to develop a budget based on what activities we ultimately decide to do. We'll come back to you between now and every board meeting to talk about this to some degree, get your feedback, get community input, make slight changes, and then by March 31st, we have to submit our report to the state, which is essentially an application to apply. So there are three overarching strategies, as I said. The first that we'll discuss being safety and well-being of students and staff. What I'm going to be sharing tonight are we've got the three big rocks, which are the three outcomes that we're hoping to see and focus on over the next 4 years. Safety and well-being of students and staff. Then there are specific strategies that we believe, when employed, will help us create a more safe, a more responsive situation for students and staff that will also promote well-being amongst students and staff. And we know that we will be focusing on supporting equity, inclusion, and instructional initiatives within this area. Increase adults in the system with targeted class size reduction, and to have an integrated prevention and mental health model in all of our schools. So what you're hearing tonight, again, is a set of mid-layer strategies, and then we will come back to you with specific activities that, for example, having a mental health professional in each of our schools would be an activity associated with the integrated prevention and mental health model strategy. Series of strategies in support of a focus on equitable outcomes for all, with an amplified focus on the desires of underserved student communities. Again, there are very specific activities associated with supporting our equity, inclusion, and instruction activities. We want to promote a multi-tiered system of support have it implemented district-wide in all of our schools. We're working with teams of educators to actually frame that MTSS system. Early stages of that, you'll hear more about the activities associated with that in subsequent meetings. well-rounded education. Like I said earlier, school is more than a series of courses that students take. We want to provide extended learning opportunities for both students and staff. We want to enhance career and technical education. As an example, the Center for Applied Learning and Community Engagement. We want to focus on a series of activities that increase third grade literacy. So our next steps, we will come back to you on the 15th with having had feedback on these strategies to see where they're refined. Public comment on those strategies, February 15th. Build out the budget throughout the month of February. Provide you with a planned overview, including specific specific activities associated with the strategies articulated this evening on March 1st, with a plan for approval from the board on March 15th, giving us 2 weeks to do what we need to do to enter all of the narrative and enter all of the budgetary information with the list of strategies and associated activities by March 31st. It's due to the state. I would say that there's a lot of information, and in preparation for each board meeting and in Friday memos, we'll put more and more information in the board packet. When you have questions that come up, I know it's not easy to remember all of them and present them in a public board meeting, but if you share with us the things that you believe need greater clarification or amplification, or maybe seem inadequate, please let us know and we will present that in as many ways as we possibly can. Happy to support you. Judy?
I'm just wondering, it is a lot of information. It's a huge task, but an important one, pulling all these plans together. I like the idea. Maybe a work session would be helpful. If, I don't know what the schedule is like, but then we could actually have a more in-depth conversation to really understand it. I'm just going to suggest that if it would help.
We'd be happy to. It's very sizable, and our goal is to integrate all of our work and present it in a way that's easily accessible to absolutely everyone in the community, including students, including parents, including staff. One of the things that I've heard through my conversations throughout the year is a lack of clarity on what it is that we're doing. And I believe that people would feel more informed and more engaged and more certain about their efforts if we can be more concise and clear about those of the district. So that's our goal.
I have a question. You noted that on February 15th, we'll be receiving public comment. Is that going to be pushed out to the community, the hope that we receive public comment? And are we going to carve out a separate, could we possibly consider carving out a separate amount of time for maybe a public hearing or whatever? I'm not sure what the proper term is, but just kind of setting it separate from our meeting so that folks don't have to sit and wait for all the other things and it doesn't get jumbled in with the rest of public comment. We can focus on it specifically.
Yeah, that might be a good time to plan a longer work session, as you recommended. We will be sending out information, inviting everybody to weigh in on our plan in its current state of development. That's 2 weeks from now, and we can plan that when we have board leadership, the next time we plan for the upcoming board meeting for sure.
So are you suggesting doing like a combination work session / public hearing so that it all comes together at once?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dye. Are there any other questions while we have him here? Which will have to stay here anyway, but while we're on topic. All right. In that case, we have a few items that were added to our agenda. The first one, Judy requested to add as an item for information, a short update on some legislative items. So Judy, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you. Thank you for some time on the agenda. As many of you know, things move pretty quickly on the legislative level. So I just want to frame 3 things specifically that have come up that really align with our priorities that we've identified. And I'd like to, as long as no one is opposed, we would move ahead and support. And Kirti and I will meet to process this all together tomorrow, depending on the feedback we get. So the first thing is that we've been asked to write a letter of support. It's not legislation, but it's a letter of support. The Early Childhood Consortium is applying for a grant from the Bureau of Labor and Industry, BOLI, through Onward Eugene and the United Way of Lane County. It's for an apprenticeship program that allows us to push on 4 essential levers to enhance childcare and early learning professionals. It will deepen expertise across the system, increase compensation, and access to comprehensive benefits, and it will also strengthen systems that support childcare, which we desperately need in our system, in our community. So it's a planning grant. It's a grant to work on some apprenticeships. And the reason they reached out to 4J is that we can get the word out, we can help them recruit people and make a connection to integrate this into CTE programs and just have the conversations. It doesn't commit us to anything other than to be a partner in the work. And when we look at our legislative priorities, we have said we would support things that align with early learning and K-12 systems, and we thought this was worthwhile. So if no one is opposed, we would write a letter of support for this application, which is coming up really fast. Any questions about that? Laurel?
Do you have something written about that you can send me so I can understand this, digest this a little better? The audio I'm getting is a little bit choppy, and I really want to understand what we want to support.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that, and I'll send you the information about the grant.
Thank you.
I'll send it to everyone. Thanks for asking. Okay, the second item.
Hold on, Kirti has a question.
Kirti.
No, it was just to say that we should just send it to everybody. So that's all.
Great, thank you. In your comments, you really did a nice job framing this. Thank you. Okay, the second item is we've been asked to, I think Gordon talked about this in his comments. There's an opioid harm reduction omnibus bill. It's House Bill 2395, and that has already had a hearing on the House side and will be going to the Senate side. So we have a little more time to sign off on the omnibus bill, which Kirti and I will be looking at, and we would bring just a summary of that to our next meeting. But there is a specific bill that is one of the sub-bills under this larger bill, and that's House Bill 2883. I'm giving you the numbers if anyone wants to look them up. But this one specifically deals with school personnel. So one of the things this bill does is last year or earlier this year added to our medication policy that we could administer naloxone in schools if someone was experiencing an opioid overdose or dose. And we already have that in our policy. What this legislation does is make sure that it's really clear that school personnel have the permission to do that, and it also makes them immune from criminal and civil liability under the same, under the law that it is trying to pass and amend. So we would like to support that because that only gives us added protections for something we've already committed to do. So if no one, I'm happy to answer questions about that. Anyone having concerns? Gordon?
I don't have concerns. I just have a procedural question of what is the process we'd need to go through for us as a board to say we want to support that bill?
So I have it, I'm at the end of my talk. I'm going to put that on for an item for action at our next meeting because we haven't. In the past, we have just, the legislative committee have written letters of support for the priorities we've identified already and voted on as a board. So I was operating under that. And this is pretty specific to a policy we passed. So I want to have that intentional conversation. Kirti and I would very much like to get people's thoughts, and we're going to recommend that at the next meeting. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and then the third is really directly related to the one of the priorities that we did vote on and identify, and that's compensation for school board members. There is a bill, House Bill 2883, and it's been proposed, and it gives a school board may choose to provide each director with a stipend in an amount determined by the board not to exceed $1,000 per month, as adjusted based on changes in the consumer price index. And the district, if they don't want to, they can choose to do that or not. They can choose to do that for some board members based on requests, but they can also not do a stipend of cash, but cover expenses at the very least. So it gives us a little more flexibility. It's very much in the spirit, I think, in what we talked about in our legislative priority.
Just to clarify, I think that's House Bill 2753.
Oh, it is 2753. Sorry, I wrote it down wrong. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That was my question. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. I doubled that 28. I put it in both places, but I have the bill right here if anyone wants to see it. Okay, so without any objective, we're going to move forward on those three things that have come to our attention on a fairly short timeline, and we'll have the discussion about how you would like us to go forward in the future at our next meeting, hopefully. Okay, thank you.
The only other thing that I might add is that if anybody wants to act as individual board members and register to testify for any of these things, that they can do that on OLIS. But in terms of board communication, we'll leave that to the legislative committee.
And if anyone has any questions of how to do that, I'm happy to help. You can testify virtually, you can go up to Salem and testify, or you can submit written testimony. And you can identify yourself as a school board member if you wish, but you aren't speaking on behalf of the board, or just as a citizen. So, thank you.
Thank you, Judy. The next item for information that we added to our agenda is board goals. Laurel, you have 3 goals you would like to suggest to us. I'll pass it off to you.
Yes, I have, let me read my notes. So my intention with this is just to, with the emails we get and what is going on and what we have and the time for the rest of the year, kind of put forward some things that look to be rising to the top. So one is to focus on North Region solutions this year. This will let us, this will help us and the community not to wonder what is happening. They will be included in the process in the decision making, which is the Engaged Community Rock. North Eugene has a history of being set aside, and that is not in our history of Eugene, that's just not equitable. So that is our equity advanced rock. There are real issues with educational outcomes when you have 2 schools in one building. And so that's the well-rounded education. This is the one that made me think of doing this and bringing this to you, because it's really something that we can set our teeth into and really work on and focus on this year. I have two that I'm really intent on, and that's the two that I'm put forward. If somebody has another one, I'd be more than happy to share this platform that I asked for. The other one is our special education. Special education still works with a parent has the time, means, and ability to discover that they are not, their child is not getting the education that they need. And I don't just mean education, but treatment as well. That if they discover that, they can do something about it. We have a number of parents that don't have the time. They're working. They're trusting the system to do what's right. And then it's not working. We have students that I mentioned this in the budget committee meeting. It's been reported to me this week that we have students that we still use restraints in 4J. I do not know if this is true or not. That we still use isolation rooms in 4J. I do not know if this is true or not. I haven't checked this with the district, but I will say that when I'm told this and parents are saying, yes, this absolutely happens, we have work as a board to change this. And these are just the things I know about, right? I know as a parent of 3 students, I had to fight for my children to have an education. 4J was absolutely prepared to just leave my kids in the dust. And I had to fight for it. I'm thinking of all the parents who do not have the time to fight, who don't have the knowledge that they can fight, who are told by our systems, oh, no, we have it, but then we don't have it. Or we are doing something where, I'm sorry, I don't have all the lingo that some of you may have, but where if you do this right, you get points. And if you get points, you get to buy something in the store. And that system really is a system of shame. And then the amount of special education students that go on to be super seniors, or they don't go on to super senior, they just say, goodbye, I guess I didn't do it. We have a responsibility to these kids, and we have a responsibility to these parents. So I would really like to make, this would probably be a multi-year goal, because it's a big, big thing for us to take on, but it's also very worthy. And I know there are other people in our community that are very passionate about this. So these are the 2 big ones that I have. And I know we have other things that we talked about, but these are the 2 I propose. Thank you.
Kathy?
So I appreciate the passion, Laurel, that you showed on those 2 things too. And I think that we're getting at 2 things. One, which I hate talking in buzzword bingo. So if I say frameworks more than once, somebody just like mute me on here. But I think, Laurel, when you suggested this item for action, one of your concerns was that we started meeting as a budget committee and that we've got to like put some priorities in place also, that we're in alignment with making sure that we have something to budget towards that are in alignment with like some of our priorities. And I feel that, and especially after like Alicia's like comments too, which is that what are our long-term commitments that we are wanting to like make sure that we are setting those foundations for. I think you guys already know that I do like working in frameworks, but I do appreciate the like taking your set of priorities and reprioritizing as such to what is feasible with what we have, what are the medium term, what are like long-term things on there, and then kind of pricing them like what Andy just showed us and Superintendent Dye in terms of like what his priorities are with budgets and those things are coming in. I think there's ways to a certain extent, and obviously I'm just thinking out loud here, processing a little bit out loud, of where those priorities can overlap, where we can like sort of coordinate efforts or put our collective priorities and goals around to a certain extent so we can fund things that have a longer term impact. I agree to a certain extent that, entirely that the North region is certainly marginalized in our community and that behaviorism is a huge issue and that is presenting on those. So but what are the programs specifically that can address those particular needs. I think that I would want to have a few work sessions. So I'm all about prioritizing, but what I'm ignorant about is what's happening through our schools and administration and some of the things on already to address some of those things, what are working, what are not. Are there things that are not working that we need to get rid of and reassign our resources somewhere? So I would suggest that, I mean, I like the idea of prioritizing to see what is in alignment and to give our budget committee something to work with too, because it's like you're going in there and we've like prioritized everything at this point. So some focus. So I think my suggestion here, and I don't know what, if we put that on, is like, you know, can we commit some work sessions on here and maybe pick a topic or something on here? Like, so whatever, I mean, if that's a proposal, if we do that through a, you know, vote, however that works, I would be open to suggestions on there, but I appreciate the urgency of this, both with knowing that we have budget obligations to meet, but that there are urgent needs that have to be addressed now.
Thanks, Kathy. Gordon?
First, I just want to say it's my understanding that we don't do restraint and seclusion, and I also am not 100% sure. I don't work in that part of the district, but I just want to be careful. It's a question that should be answered, but I also want to be careful about honoring the work of the people in the district who are doing this work, to not raise that whatever, just to be sure about that. I also think these are both really critical things. I mean, and I would like to have it included in the bigger conversation we have about goals. I know that, I mean, obviously there's a process going on the North region, certainly on Kelly and YG, and the specifics of what to do with the old North High School. And I know that special education is one of the main things that the district is looking at, which is not to say that it shouldn't be one of our goals. I think it should. I just think I want to figure out what is the part that we as the board can do. So I would love to have a work session about that, to hear about what's going on and to try to figure out, because I agree. I think it's a critical thing. Thanks.
Are there any other comments? Okay, then with that, we move on to items for action. And we will start with the one that was already on the agenda. Consider revisions to board policy BDD, board meeting procedures. I think Rob is joining us if we have any questions for him. This came to us a few meetings ago and was brought to us by Gordon Laper. Yes, start with a motion so we can have a discussion if necessary. Gordon, you have your hand raised. Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I move that we adopt the part of Robert's rules for regular meetings as opposed to small meetings, which says that on any given topic, each board member will be given a chance to speak once and then twice. And then after that, we either vote or move on unless we adopt a motion to extend debate. But otherwise, without a motion to extend debate, the default would be each of us speaks twice, and then that's the limit of debate. So that's the motion.
So can we restate, is it okay to restate the motion as adopting the revisions as presented in our board packet to board policy BDD?
Yes, absolutely. And just to clarify, this is the way the regular Roberts rules work. Then there's also Roberts rules for small boards. And our policy says that we use Roberts rules for small boards, except where we specify otherwise. And there are some other places where we specify otherwise. So this would be in addition to that.
Is there a second? Okay, moved by Gordon Lafer and seconded by Michelle Shu. Is there any discussion? Judy?
It was only a few weeks ago that I learned there were two sets of Robert's rules to begin with, but I've done some research on them, the small board rules and the large board rules, and I guess, I'm probably gonna vote against the amendment. It might still pass, but I just don't think we need it. I don't think that's gonna, I think the whole idea, the reason I think that exists in the large board is there's so many people. And the small board rules are recommended for groups 12 and under, and even as high as 20 and under. And I think the idea of Robert's rules is so everyone can be heard. And I don't know that people speak 3 or 4 or 5 more times, but I also think with a small board, it's helpful to make sure we can get to a decision. So I guess I'd rather keep it simple, and I probably don't think we need that. I think, I'm not sure what problem we're trying to fix, so that's all I'm gonna say.
Alicia?
Thanks, Maya. So, you know, you guys have heard this. I've been on the board 16 years and we've never implemented something like this. I think I do worry we're putting this forward to shut down voices, and to be specific, to shut down a couple people's voices who tend to share more and talk more. And there are times I am one of those people, particularly when I'm very passionate about something. And there are times that I won't speak on a subject at all. I would say that this is something we don't need. We saw earlier today the ability to call the question and to get the votes to move on and to stop the debate when it does get to that place where sometimes we're hearing the same thing over and over again. So right now I won't tell you how I'm going to vote, but I think you have a feel for it. Thanks.
I just do want to remind us that it's not okay for us to assume the intentions, but I understand your concern, Alicia. I just hope that we can reframe it as curiosity and asking questions of one another versus assuming.
Are you in line right now?
So thanks.
Are you in line to talk now?
Laurel, you're next. You can speak next. Yes, Alicia? Laurel?
I'd just like to remind the chair that your job is to guide the meeting, not correct your peers. That is not appropriate.
Laurel,
I need
to make sure that we are
doing it again. Could you please listen? It is really unfortunate that you don't listen. So anyway, I do believe this is done because at this point, the leadership of our meeting is displaying supremely racist behavior and treating the Black board member as she is of a different caste. And it is being done to silence, much like when Maya shut the meeting down against board policy and public meetings policy. We don't follow policy, so for this to come to the board from Gordon when he is on record saying you're in a meeting and one of our goals meetings saying you take pride in not following the rules. It's unfortunate. It's bad behavior. We are not 50 odd people that you need to restrict this. We are a few people, but the bad behavior is not coming from all of us. It's becoming from a few of you who want to own the meeting, and it's just not appropriate. That is not how this is set up to work. So it's always going to undermine us and make us weak, which is what this leadership is doing to this board. So this is not needed. Maybe talking a lot less at the beginning of the meeting would be helpful. So it doesn't take an hour and a half before we start a meeting and get to actual board work. I think the things that you say about people in meetings are great and about our staff, but I think they should be done on a TikTok or something, not in this work environment where we're supposed to be doing board work. I think it's grandstanding and it's taking time, yes. So I have asked in leadership for us to take less time at the beginning of the meeting, and it was absolutely denied and shut down. We could be better people. We could do this better. But it doesn't, but trying to shut down board members' voice is just, it's bad form. It's just not well done. And it's not the democratic process. And it's unfortunate that you think it's okay to do this, because it actually just hurts our district and our meeting.
Are there any other comments? Michelle?
As Laurel had said earlier, we are a board of 7, and we all have a place to speak. And clearly some people speak more than others. So while I'm hearing that someone feels that their voice is being silenced, I feel that a lot of other voices are being silenced as a reaction. I do not feel that everyone has equal voice.
Thank you, Michelle. I will put myself in the queue to clarify that there might be some misunderstanding of what my role as chair is. And if I am seeing violations of Robert's rules, I'm negligent if I don't call attention to them. And one of those is making assumptions about the intentions of our fellow board members. And it's one that we can do better with. And it's my job to call attention to it. So I will continue to do that. Are there any other comments about this proposal? Which, by the way, includes the ability to continue debate. It sets the precedence of having a commitment to being concise with our words, not repeating ourselves, which tends to happen in our board meetings when we feel as though we're not finding support for our words. We often repeat the same comment again, and this can help to prevent that from happening. But there is no stifling or limiting of debate. There is a standard set that is aligned with Robert's rules. I don't see following Robert's rules as undemocratic, and if we are to take that as the assumption here, then we need to really dig deep into whether Robert's rules is how we want to conduct our meetings, and not just deciding that some of the rules are great and some of them are not. If there's no other comments, then I ask, Judy.
I just wanted to say quick that I don't think the debate is on which set of Robert's rules to use. We aren't debating whether to use Robert's rules. So that's wanted to clarify.
The debate is about whether we adopt the revisions to board policy BDD.
Correct, but it's not about, we use Robert's rules, and it's, do we want to amend it and use this one?
Right.
Okay. I just want to clarify, that's
sure,
all.
But that one component of Robert's rules was referred to as undemocratic.
Okay.
And it's important for us, if that is the shared belief by this body of 7, then we need to reconsider if Robert's rules is the path we want to take. Laurel?
Hi. So I said you and Gordon bringing this to the board to try to stifle voice was undemocratic, not Robert's rules, which is actually made to give voice to the minority, which is important. I don't think it's the best. I think it's obviously made by patriarchal people, but it's what we have right now. And it's what I have to depend on as a Black person, and it's still not being followed. So that we want to change something that is already not being used well is amazing to me. And so let's understand what we have right now before we change it. Because really, it's important that we not shut down voice. You said that to me, but now that's what you're trying to do. So I'm not understanding, and that is what's not democratic. So I will not allow words to be placed into my mouth because they are inappropriate and wrong. And it's called gaslighting, by the way.
I think conflating me and Michelle. Michelle was the one who made the comment about shutting down
Put
voices.
yourself in the queue.
No, I'm going to respond because you were addressing me.
No, we put ourselves in the queue. That is Robert's Rules of Order, Maya. This is the point. You do not follow them.
To clarify, this was a motion brought forward by Gordon Lafer. So I am my own person. Thank you. Kirti?
So I'm not gonna lie, like I've been struggling with this one for all the reasons mentioned. But like it's painful being on here at 10 o'clock, like not gonna lie either. Like we've said that like on here, but at the same time, like I think we've all been culpable in not following and or choosing to follow rules when it suits our purpose. All of us. And I can say that thing on here because like, I mean, even when I started, it was like, we've been so wishy-washy with this process works for us, so we're going to follow it. This process doesn't work for us, so we're going to follow it. And like, there hasn't been any consistency, frankly, on what we choose to follow and not. So I'm inclined to vote for this because I do agree with Michelle to a certain extent, because I sometimes like by the time debate ends, like I don't even want to like say my 2 cents. Like I'm just tired and just want to end and move on, which is not also fair because like there's time to process some of those things. But at the same time, I think like we need to get to a point where we are holding each other accountable for, if we're going to agree to a policy, we can't just be like, yeah. And I don't actually know what chair policy is. I don't know what leadership policy is. I don't know what any of that stuff. So one thing I have to do is actually educate myself on what Robert's rules are and hold ourselves accountable for following that, because we can't just be inconsistently like on this. I like the idea that we can choose to continue debate because there are issues that warrant significant extended discussion on there. So I am like I said, this isn't sitting well in either direction for me because like we haven't shown consistency as a board on anything really on process and procedure as we've been working with each other and on here. So I'm like, I would like to, if we do this, I would like to be able to like hold ourselves accountable for that. So that would be helpful, I think, in making sure all of the voices are heard on here. So I mean, that's my take on it.
Are there any other comments? Alicia?
Thanks, Maya. Appreciate your comment about intention and calling that out. Appreciate that. I'm sitting here just thinking, like I said, it hasn't been an issue, and I'm just wondering who it's an issue for, who 2 times, or you got to get your 2 times in. Those of us that think while we talk, those of us that don't write everything down to, and that get thoughts or want to respond to things that our fellow board members say, that healthy debate that gets us to the right place. I'm not going to argue that we as a board have had healthy debate, but I do fear that cutting to 2 will affect people who don't think in a certain order, in a certain way, and think and really need to react more than or have time. And I don't think it's going to help the way you think it's going to help. I think it's probably going to be more issues and more opportunity for disagreement. So to that end, I am going to vote no. And if it doesn't pass, I would suggest that we continue as a board to work on trying to be succinct and to limiting our debate and like let's talk about not assuming and all of those things that we try to do and we get caught up because we're human, and it happens. So anyway, I would like us to think about who this might leave out that isn't even on the board yet. I think about some of our budget committee members. How would this be affected, that situation and so forth? So just give that a thought as you vote.
Are there any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the revisions to board policy BDD as outlined in our packet, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. I see ayes from Maya Rabasa, Gordon Lafer, Kirthi Hasija Kaufman, and Michelle Shu. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. I see hands raised by Alicia Hayes, Laurel O'Rourke, and Judy Newman. The motion passes 4-3. Next item for action is the item we agreed to add, suggested by Gordon. Is there a motion to put on the table? Gordon?
I move that we dismiss the complaint that we heard in executive session earlier today.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, moved by Gordon to dismiss the complaint we heard in executive session this evening and seconded by Michelle Shu. Is there discussion? Laurel?
The hubris of this board in that the ethics and the necessary, I know it's just impossible because I don't know why I try, because you don't follow ethics. You just do what you want to do and you're okay with it. And I just can't fathom that in my world. So when you are given the ability to govern yourself, it is something that you should absolutely take very seriously and be very careful with. But we are rushing, and we're okay with rushing through this because we have board members that believe that might is right and might isn't right. And the proof will come out in the long run. The Germans thought that too. They were wrong. A lot of people have thought that in the past and they were wrong. This is wrong. And the way I'm being treated is wrong. And I think we have a lot to work on.
I'm putting myself in the queue to remind each other again that it is against our rules to assume intention of each other as board members. Alicia?
Thanks, Maya. When I look at this, I look at the rules as they stand now and our policies and our practices they stand now. And so I vote a certain way tonight, given that. But at the end, I know we're working on some of this. And at the end of the meeting, I'm gonna just ask that we have an update on where we are on this, because I think we have to change some of it, some of our policies and practice about complaints, given the way it's written, and following those rules. I know that that has guided me in the way I will vote tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. Laurel?
The other thing I wanted to mention is it has been brought up several times, I believe by Gordon, to have an ombudsman, which is somebody would be an independent contractor that would look at these things. I would love to know where we are on that as well, because I think that would help with a lot of this.
Okay, can we bring that up at the end of the meeting so that we can limit debate to the motion on the table? Gordon and then Kirti.
I just also wanted to ask to not make assumptions about people. We disagree, it's fine, that's democracy, but to be compared to Germans, to be compared to Nazis is just out of place. So I hope we can avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Kirti.
I did have the question on the ombudsman too, so if that's going to be tabled till after this, I was actually really curious as to where we are in that 7 months into the process.
Are there any other comments regarding the motion on the table? Michelle?
I agree with Alicia that we are limited by the rules, the way they are written at this time. And I personally have invested a lot of energy and consideration and thought. I have read through all materials multiple times. I have a lot invested in preparation for these meetings, and I don't take this lightly.
I'm gonna add myself to the queue and say that I also have invested a tremendous amount of time, including the executive session that we had before this meeting. I'm not sure if there's questions that will be coming up, and I feel confident that we really dug into this and have been advised by legal counsel. Are there any other comments? Judy?
Just briefly, I just want to also go on record to say, I wish we did have another avenue, but after listening to the attorney, doing my homework about the complaint, I think we're bound by the rules, and I'm looking forward to talking about changing our policies, adding policies about when complaints are against board members, by board members, etc. Because I do think we can do a better job with how we handle them than our policy now dictates.
Are there any further comments? Gordon, I saw your hand up. Did you put it down? Okay. All those in favor of dismissing the complaint that was shared in the executive session, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
I see hands raised by Maya Rabasa, Judy Newman, Gordon Lafer, Alicia Hayes, and Kirti Hasija Kaufman. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. I see a nay from Laurel O'Rourke. The motion passes 6-1. With that, we move on to item for action at a future meeting. The board is not scheduled to take action on these items tonight. These items will come back to the board for action at a future meeting. We already heard from Superintendent Skirdo and Board Chair Linda Hamilton. So we move on to considering options for the original North Eugene High School building. And I pass it off to you, Andy, and Kyle, if he's with us.
Thank you. Make sure that Kyle's here. Kyle, thank you. So the board was presented with the information that we have available. There's a pending question as to what decision that we will make with the existing North Eugene High School building after staff and students move into the new building. The information you were given, has financial information about what would need the implications of maintaining that building as it currently stands, and the financial implications of removal of the building to replace with green space. I know that there are today even lots of people that weighed in and shared their thoughts about what might be possible. I think it's clear. The decision is what becomes of that building. I think what isn't clear are the values that would guide that decision, and in the absence of those values, every idea seems very, very compelling. But no intention is, there is no intention of making a decision now. There is a deadline to consider that's looming, however. We will need to either decide to demo the building prior to receiving the certificate of occupancy, or we will pay the SDC fees in order to get that certificate of occupancy, and we are hoping, correct me if I'm wrong, I think completion sometime in mid-May, early to mid-May, and then for the move to happen over the summer so that we can start school in that new building. That's pretty hard and fast. That doesn't mean that you need to decide tonight or next week. There are just implications if we don't. And we want to be able to provide you with the information that you need so you can make a sound decision. Kyle, is there something that you might add?
I think, Andy, thank you. I'll just follow up a little bit with you on the SDC component piece. As you mentioned, it is hard to believe, and it is very exciting that we're 80% of the way completed with the new North. And with that, the timeline for the operations staff or facility staff puts the pressure on as those decisions made because of our construction timelines that take us to where we need to be. So yes, if the decision is made that the old North will stay, what will happen is we will pay SDCs, or what we refer to as SDCs. Those are their system demand charges that are associated with every new building on the construction side, and that is to the tune of about $725,000, and then that will be along with some of our other fees to allow us to have the occupancy permit so that we can then, once the building is complete, get students and staff transition moved over the summer to be able to do that. If the decision is made to initially keep it, we pay those fees, and then the decision after the fact is to do something different with the fee or with the building. The concern would be is that we're not sure that we would be able to recoup some of those costs. And so the other piece of the construction timeline, just for the board's awareness, if the decision is made to remove the old building and to replace it with the green space or practice field space that was lost due to the new building being added. There was a soccer field that was replaced, softball field that was there that was also relocated back behind the building, the old building, and behind the baseball field. To be able to do that, our timeline for that is about a 20-month construction schedule. So as you can see, based on where we're at today, 20 months from now, for us to get the design documents ready, get them to the city, get the information to them, get it approved, get the building abated, get it down on the ground, and get that process for North Eugene to have those viable fields potentially for the fall of 24. We're pushing the clock as it is. And so that's another reason, just from the operational staff, that we're just needing some sort of direction as to whether it's going to stay or whether it's going to go.
Are there questions for Kyle and Superintendent Alicia?
Hey, Kyle, what is
Alicia.
the green space at North compared to the green space at like our other 3 high schools? It seems like they have a lot less. Am I?
Yes, that is correct. So prior to the new building being put in, North was just a little over 11 acres, 11 and a half. And if you compared that at that time, Sheldon has about 10 and a half, South has around 9, Churchill has 19, but that's a little bit misleading because a considerable amount of that space is underwater for a considerable amount of time just because of the way it sits. And so realistically, it's probably in the 10 range as well. When we put in the new building, losing the soccer field and moving the softball field behind the old building, North now sits at just over 5 acres, so about 5.5. If we take the old building down and put in the fields back where the old building is, that would put them back right somewhere in the 10.5 to 11 range. So it wouldn't quite get them back to where they were, but it would get them comparable to the other 3 sites.
Thank you.
Judy.
Okay, I have a clarification and a question. So we'd be paying system development charge. We wouldn't have to pay them if we had decided to tear down North, because there wouldn't be a charge, because there wouldn't be 2 buildings, there wouldn't be a new building on the, is that right?
So yes, Judy, we pay them. It's basically what normally would happen is, for example, at Edison and at Camas, the building comes down and the new building is replaced on the same site. So in essence, we get the credit for the old building that was there. What happened is that because the old North is still in existence, we got a little bit of credit for the old YG corridor building, but that doesn't match up because that building was about 44,000 square feet. The North building is about 214,000 square feet. So that increases your cost. So that's where you get the 725. If the old building comes down and we submit those documents to the city, then we get the credit for the old building, which in essence gives us about $600,000 of that. There is always still fees associated with it, but in this case, it would be significantly higher if the building stays versus if the building comes down.
That's what I was assuming, so thank you for clarifying that. So my other question is, there was a gentleman who testified tonight, and a couple of people I know have asked me, what would be the option to keep part of the old North building, like maybe the parts that were renovated in 2000, or some of the gyms? What would that be like? Is there something in the middle there, or do you just have 2 bad outcomes that's even more expensive? Just curious.
Sure, that's a really good question. So the current North had a little bit of remodel done with the 2000 bond. I believe that they phased it in 2 phases sometime around 2003. And basically what that consisted of was some remodeling of the cafeteria. They did some remodeling out in front of the auditorium. They did some classroom spaces, some bathrooms, and some minor components within there, some bleachers and some other pieces to it. And what happens is that when you start chopping up a building or trying to piece it out, it becomes very problematic, especially on a building like North, because of the concrete structure that it's built from. It is really hard to just separate the building and all of a sudden cut the building in half, so to speak, and then save a gym. If we take that portion of the building down that is connected to the gym, you have elevated costs with construction because you have to go back in and replace walls and doors and other component pieces of it. That is something that we have not vetted very much. And I will tell you that in my previous district, we had that same exact conversation when we had replaced an elementary school, and there was conversation exactly that about saving the old gym. And basically, after doing the evaluation from the engineering staff, it just became very problematic from the shoring component, i.e. structurally, that based on the old building coming down to try to keep it to where it needed to be. So not having an exact answer as to whether or not there would be how much of an increased cost, but certainly there's going to be an added cost component to that piece. And then if that is kept, some of those pieces, that is going to take away from green space or field space being put back, because that would have to be laid in there somehow to potentially try to get them back to what they had prior to.
Thank you.
Gordon?
Thanks. I just want to ask if at our next meeting, we can get an update about where things at and what the options are that we're looking at with Kelly and YG, because we're kind of talking about these on two parallel tracks. But, from the beginning, when Kelly and YG were co-located, what those communities were told was that one of the options in the future would be for one of those schools to make use of the Old North space. And I just want to make, maybe everybody's already on this and it's obvious. I want to make sure we don't resolve this question before dealing with that and then say, oh, that option doesn't exist until, here's our limited option. So I know that I'm no longer on that committee. I know the North Region Committee is working on that, and we just talked about the urgency. But I think it would be helpful to be able to know where that's at before making a final decision on this question of keeping all or part of this building versus tearing it all down. Thanks.
Laurel, and then I'm adding myself to the queue.
I agree about getting more information. Kelly and YG, that's one of my biggest concerns around this. I'd also like to know, and maybe I missed this in the report, do we have a clear layout of all the land that we own in the North region?
Yeah, Laurel, we do. We basically, where all of our schools sit in the North region, obviously we own all of that property. And then there is another 14-acre piece of property that the district owns that is not too far from Madison Middle School. But there's no other, we don't own any other property outside of that in the North region.
And is that piece of property earmarked for anything already by the district?
Not that I'm aware of. And I think the district has had the property for quite some time. So yeah, at least in the 4 years that I've been with the district, I have not had a conversation with anybody that it has a specific purpose.
Okay. And is there a possibility of purchasing? I know that area around North Eugene is pretty tight, and Kelly YG, but is there any land around there that is for sale that we could purchase?
Not that I know of at this point. That doesn't mean that there isn't. One of the things that we do know is land, especially bigger pieces of land that we need to acquire, especially for school sites, because of our footprints take up a pretty considerable size. They are recommended size of lot size for our elementary schools. If you had the ideal piece would be around 10 acres. It's about 20 acres for a middle school and about 40 acres for a high school if you were to buy just vacant land to build on. But I'm not aware of any in the region, but that doesn't mean that we certainly can't look and see if there's something available.
I guess the last question I have is what are the repercussions of having less fewer sports fields as compared to others in our districts? I mean, do other districts have less?
I think that's actually a really good question, Laurel. I think it really depends. It really depends on the district and where you go to. As far as our neighbors in Bethel and Springfield, I don't know their footprints exactly, but I would say that they're probably comparable to most of our schools or most of our sites. The tough part with North, based off of the new building going where it went and the loss of that soccer field and softball field, and then the softball field being relocated. When we relocated the softball field based behind the baseball field, is that took away some more field space, which at that point in time was being used. And I can just tell you from my days as a teacher and a coach, 5 acres for a high school with the volume of sports teams that are going on and the activities that are going on, that is really tough for the athletic department to manage, to put all of those folks in different areas to try to get them to practice without forcing them to have to practice at 8 or 9 or 10.
So it could be a hardship on the students and
correct
and coaching staff. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, I think it's also a clear equity issue if we have the students only at North having to limit their practice times to really unfortunate hours of the day. I like Gordon, have heard from folks who the ongoing conversation surrounding YG and Kelly, who have expressed over the years feeling of being of not having promises followed through on. And I'm hearing recently from folks who are reminding or informing, because I wasn't aware of this, that there was a promise or an intention communicated to not make a decision about the North building until a decision was made about the Kelly and YG building or programs. So I would like us to, I know that we are in the midst of scheduling our next conversation with the Kelly and YG folks. And I would like to really make sure that those two conversations are linked and not disconnected, because I know that the students and the families that are currently at YG and Kelly are certainly not disconnecting those two conversations. We've gotten not quite a few, it's actually been a handful of emails, but they're often asking similar questions. And the one that stood out to me, and if you don't have an answer for this time, that's totally fair, because I'm just throwing it out at you. But I have my own answer to it, but I am not a facilities director and do not pretend to be. But there's a question of, is it possible for 4J to sell the building to an outside youth organization, whether it's kids sports? I don't even know if they're interested in it. I don't know if it would ultimately mean that then we wouldn't have the building and we wouldn't have the grass. But so I don't know if you have an initial reaction, or maybe we can hear about it in a Friday memo as to how to respond to folks who are asking that particular question. Okay, so I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am hoping that to get some insight into why that would not be the path that we would take. I see it as, here's a resource for us, and we have to choose, do we want the resource to be a building that is going to cost quite a bit to upkeep, or do we want the resource to be green space to bring our school up to par, but not even quite comparable, right? It's still gonna be less than in terms of playing fields and being able to avoid Title IX discrimination complaints and situations. And yeah, so my short question is, could we or would we sell this, and why or why not in terms of wanting to do that?
So I'll answer the first part of the question, and the second part of the question is actually probably for my boss. But the first part of the question is, yes, we can obviously sell the property or sell the building. the question then becomes, whether or not the board and the superintendent is the direction that we go. What happens, as you know, and Laurel's already asked the question around space. And so if you sell that property, you sell it to, let's say, Kid Sports or Y or whoever, it's not yours. And you don't have access to it, and it creates some other issues. And you're certainly not going to be able to use it. Not only not if the building stays, but if the building goes, you're going to lose that space completely. And unfortunately, as Eugene has grown, there is less and less land available.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Alicia, and then we'll go into another round.
I can't tell if Judy had her hand up before me. Did you, Judy? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. She raised it. She was old school. Okay. All right, I'll go. And then Judy. So appreciate those of you that are on the North Visioning Committee. It was confusing as to what we were going to do. We didn't have answers when we went out for that bond measure and we decided to build the new North. I remember Mary Walston was a champion for, quitting us kicking that can down the road and to make a decision. When we did go out, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to salvage the North building at all. I think it was Jim Torrey who brought up it as even a possibility, and it was always out there as a question. That being said, I understand the confusion, and I certainly respect that people, there wasn't as much clarity as I would have hoped for, and I know we're dealing with that now. I also really understand that there's so many needs in the community, and to have a building like that, people have talked about the clinic that's there and the gyms that are there, and that is all very, very true. And I also think about the students that are there and North, and one of the reasons we built a new building was because they deserved a building in a space like the other schools did, and a place, and they didn't have the space. They were holding their AV program, in a closet, and it just, I'm so excited that we have that new building. And I think we have to look at that green space as well, even though, like I said, I know there's so much community need. On our agenda, and maybe I have an old one, but I was looking it up, it said that we don't have a superintendent's recommendation yet that I see, and I'm guessing we will get that in 2 weeks. And if I'm wrong, please let me know. And if I missed it, it's not that I ignore you when you talk, Andy. It's just I might have missed it. And as I was reading, it said it was going to come. So if that's in 2 weeks, I appreciate that. But if there is one tonight, I'd love to hear it. Thanks.
Do you have an answer? Oh, sorry.
No, I don't have a recommendation at this time. I think that might be a bit premature because we haven't had as much public discussion as I think would be helpful. So, here you have it,
Judy?
So I definitely agree with my fellow board members. I would like to have the YG Kelly situation resolved. It seems to all be in the same conversation. I think it's relevant. That was my first reaction when this came to our attention. But I think what I'd like to get a sense for is what our timelines are here. I mean, I'm seeing I'm assuming this came to us because there's some urgency to make a decision, or we'll end up, if we do wait to the decision, the potential is we'll pay more money, or I'd like to know the timeline. So is it realistic we could get the North YG thing resolved, or at least a plan to go forward? And I'd also like to know if the conversation, I think I had heard that neither YG nor Kelly thought that the Old North building would meet their needs, in which case it wouldn't be part of the conversation. So I guess I just would like to know timeline, and if that is true, that this wouldn't meet the needs of either school.
Superintendent Guy.
I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to put my thumb on the scale, but I know in many ways the two issues, Kelly YG and what to do there, is connected to what's happening at North. But it can't be forgotten that if we are going to keep the existing North building up, there are going to be considerable costs associated with that. We would need to put a new roof on, and I don't just frankly know if we have the money to do that and then to do any remodeling. So I just want to call that out again, because I do think it's important. I don't want to make a false promise to any school community and then later on down the line say, but in 7 years or in 10 years or associated with the next bond.
34 plus, so anyhow, and then the timeline. And then the timeline, maybe Kyle has that answer.
Yeah, Judy, I think the timeline, I mean, the reality is that we're coming closer and closer to the new building being finished. And as that comes to close, so we can have the occupancy permit to start the furniture arrival and the transition of staff and students to the new building, that those fees will be paid and associated with it, and we'll get going and get them into the new building. And the timeline, if the reality is that the decision is made that the building comes down and green space is there, as I said earlier, that's a 20 to a 22-month construction schedule. So to answer your question I just presented this information based on the fact that I want the board to have all of the information in front of them. If the building stays or if the building goes, they have the acreage in front of them. And if the decision is made, it's made. If it's not made, it's not made. It just allows the operational side to be able to plan for either or.
Michelle?
This isn't simply a math equation of looking at what costs are. To look at the North Eugene High School as it stands, and visions of what it could be used for. In reality, renovation and adaptive reuse, there needs to be a lot of analysis involved. And to take one organization or one school and think that it will function in a healthy, gosh, it's late, workable way. To think you can take an elementary school and elementary school students and put them into a building that was designed for high school. It doesn't necessarily work. Yes, there's nostalgia for a building. There are emotions attached to spaces where people experienced benchmarks in their lives and created friendships, and it worked for the time that it did. It's really difficult to say that the investment for quote unquote fixing it the way it stands is going to be useful for any other organization or school. And I think that's a really big consideration.
Laurel?
I think from everything, the letters we're getting and from the information we have, I think we need to do better at the engaged community rock here. I know we have hard decisions to make, but I want to hear from the people who live there and are using those areas. Does anybody here live in North Eugene? You do? Great. I don't know. I don't live in that area. And so the thing I would want to hear the most are the most voices from the people there. And I want them to have some of the information we have as well, so they can be making informed choices for their area, and then we can make the decision off of that discussion. Because I really want people to, the letters we're getting, what I hear the most is, we don't know what's going on. Is anything even happening? We don't know. And that means we're failing the communication part here, and we want to be more transparent. So I'd love to see that. I do need to know, like, how soon this needs to happen. But thank you for this discussion, because this is why I'm here. This kind of thoughtful discourse to get to a good solution. Thank you.
Michelle.
There's also a very important education piece. It's of course necessary to have community input. We need staff input, we need educator input, we need everyone's input, and to be informed properly by professionals who can analyze what that building can and can't be used for, the investment that could be invested, what is the return on that? Everyone can envision, you have a building, we can use it for other things, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. We see buildings all over town that don't function quite right. I go to restaurants that no one considered acoustics, no one considered lighting. How are the spaces used? So there's an education piece there that a high school can't just be used for anything else. It might not work. And then you're gonna have unhappy residents.
Are there any other questions for Kyle or Andy? Okay, thank you, Kyle. We appreciate your time. So our next meeting, regular board meeting, is scheduled for February 15th, 2023. The last item on our agenda is suggestions by the board for consideration of items at a future meeting. Are there items the board has to suggest for adding to future board meeting agendas? Gordon?
I would like to add the consideration of a policy around the book challenge that would be based on, but maybe make some amendments to the AR that we received recently.
Are there two other people who support adding this to the agenda? Okay, I see Michelle's hand and my hand. So Gordon, we will take this to leadership to consider the best place for us to, and the best time for us to address this question.
Thanks. And then my second thing was going to be about the legislation about opioid overdoses, but Judy, I'm guessing that you're going to speak more intelligently to that than me. Okay, then I'll shut up.
Back, but I will.
Judy?
I want to put on an item for discussion about how the legislative committee is going to function in terms of responding to legislation, just letting the board know, anyhow, just what kind of communication we want to be able to take action, and that would include that that legislation, which we already raised tonight, Gordon.
Are there 2 hands of support for adding that? Okay, let's see, Gordon and myself, so that will come to the legislative, the leadership team to discuss adding to the future agenda. Are there any other topics? Alicia?
Yeah, I would like info on where we are on, I could be wrong, but I thought we were going to look at our complaint process. And if we are in the process of doing that, where are we? And when will we have a chance to have input on it? Just kind of where are we in the process and what is the process? If we haven't started it, then, and I apologize that I don't know whether we have or this has been put on before. I think I saw Andy shaking his head that we had. But anyway, can you help me with this as to what I'm asking?
Yeah, I'll let Andy expand, but we actually already approved the changes to that policy a few meetings ago.
We did take a look at, not the policy, but the AR associated with
Right.
KLAR. We did not include it at that time, any reference to instances in which a complaint was filed against a board or by a member of the board, and so this would be a wrinkle that wasn't considered then, and if we need to do that, we certainly can.
Thank you. I didn't think we had it. So mine is that we should take time and consider that, to look at that and how that process works and how to improve it.
Are there 2 hands of support? Okay, I see more than that, so
great.
Add that to the list.
Is there somebody else? Because I had one more, but I can come back around and get in the queue.
Why don't you just finish up so then we can move on to the next person?
Okay. I want to look at our communication as a board. I would like to have staff explain to me and everybody else what this app Signal is. It is worrisome. I just want to know what it is because I hear people are using it and I'm not really sure what it is or why we're using it. So I would like to know what that is. I've heard people talk about it being illegal. I'm not sure it's illegal. I don't want to go there. I'm not an attorney. But I want to know why we're using it. And I also really want clarity. I appreciate Maya's email to all of us about how we email the board. And I'd like to make sure we're all clear on that. And those are 2 big pieces of communication that I would like to see come back to the board relatively soon to make sure we're all in compliance. We're all, understanding what each of us is doing around that. Is that clear enough or do you need more clarity, Maya?
No, pretty clear to me.
Okay, thanks.
Hands of support for this proposal? Okay. Laurel? You're muted, Laurel.
I'd like to bring back the goals conversation. It was asked to be brought back at the end of the meeting. So I'm bringing that back for that to come back to the board so we can finalize that hopefully this month.
Are there 2 hands to support bringing that forward? Yeah, Alicia, Judy would like to ask a question first.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I definitely think we should get back on it, and we talked about doing a work session soon that would be able to identify them. I think that should be, I would agree with that, and if this process is also relative to work sessions, that would be great, I agree with it.
Yeah, Judy, one of the things that we can consider as leadership is the appropriate venue for the conversation, so work session, board meeting, whatever. So, hands of support. Yeah, I don't think we have a choice, and that's been on our list forever, so, yes. Is there something else, Laurel?
Yes, I'd like to be, security and board meetings to come back to the meeting. We haven't talked about it since October.
Are there two hands of support for bringing that to leadership? Okay. Is there anything else, Laurel? Kirby?
I'd like to add this to Alicia's complaint process, but it was a conversation earlier on ombudsman, since we're all dealing with multiple things on here, and we clearly need some sort of third party something. So I know that was part of our agreement last year with the new superintendent, and just since we're 7 months into the term, I would like some information, I guess, that information or whatever that is, on what that process looks like and where we are.
Okay, that sounds great. Are there hands of support? Okay. I believe we have a pretty straightforward update that we could get. So whether that comes in Friday memo or in a meeting, we definitely can all be on the same page about this ombudsperson program. Are there any other items to bring to leadership for consideration on where and how and when to bring forward? Well, with that, I want to say thank you to everyone. The meeting is adjourned at 10:57 p.m. Good night.
So, just